I don't know if you can, but can you get an owner for ONS? That's ONS Junior Market. The address is 1934 East Anaheim. All the windows are busted out, and it's like a free-for-all here, and the owner should maybe come down here and see if he can secure his business if he wants to.
Riots begin in Los Angeles slightly after the Minnesota immigration raids, and another set of raids that are set to have, or that had happened rather at the time, in LA at a Home Depot. These riots have come to such an extent that the National Guard has been called out, and possibly the Marines are in reserve ready to go as well. We're going to talk about a lot of this. And I see a lot of pros and cons that are going for both sides of the political aisle on this one, so I am going to analyze this as neutrally as possible. Of course, a lot of you know that when I look into something like this, one of the first things I'm going to say is, hey, if they want to go and burn their own neighborhoods down, why are we standing in here and trying to stop them? But we'll talk about all of this, where this goes, and what we do from here. In other news, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back in the U.S. He has been returned, but it was mostly to face charges that he had pending here. So we're going to go over what the charges were, what's happening to him, what happens to him next, and where we go from there. Bombings in Kiev have raised the question over U.S. involvement in the Russia-Ukraine war once again. And speaking of war on foreign soil, we are also looking at the distinct possibility, that something is about to pop off over in Iran, which, as usual, was led by the U.S. evacuating embassies in the countries immediately surrounding Iran. So we're going to talk about that, what's happening there, and where we go with that. It's going to be a long one today, guys, so strap yourselves in, find some friends, find a little bit of breakfast, and have your morning coffee with me, Jay Edgar, and... Oops, lost my lyrics. Off the Florida Keys, there's a place called Kokomo. That is where you want to go to get away from it all. Bodies in the sand, tropical drink melting in your hand. We'll be falling in love to the rhythm of a steel drum band. Down in Kokomo, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. That funky mix on Dire Docks kind of makes me want to go and play Mario 64 again. And I got two versions of it, actually. I think actually with Living with Palm, I've got three. now that I think about it, because she has got an actual original hardware N64. It's got some problems with the reset button right now, but that's going to be a matter of getting the thing apart and getting it cleaned up and go, because it just randomly resets while you're playing. And then, of course, I've got the Switch Online version because, well, we've never played Switch Online on stream. You guys have seen it pop up in my games library when I play Skyward Sword and Mario 64 on stream. Have we played? I think in the midst of something we did play some Switch Online at some point. I think it was a Super Nintendo though. But yeah, I've got that version, and then I actually got the DS version as well, Mario 64 DS, that you actually for the first part of it didn't play as Mario, oddly enough. So if I want to play it, it's not going to be hard. I know my 3DS is currently occupied based on the fact that I am playing Pokemon Soul Silver off screen. And I have debated, I don't know if I want to do Pokemon Live because it's long, drawn out, grindy, and boring like Final Fantasy X was. But possibly doing a Let's Play where I can take sections of it and actually fast forward while I'm grinding and doing stuff like that. So you guys don't have to sit there and watch me. Oh, hey, another Sandshrew. Oh, look, another Sandshrew. Oh, another Sandshrew. On those particular playthroughs, I've been using the remakes when available. So I did Leaf Green, and now I'm doing Soul Silver with the intent to do Alpha Sapphire and probably Brilliant Diamond. But then going back to the originals, I do want it off screen. It's just a thing of mine. I enjoyed the first game so much, I want to go through and do a full playthrough of every generation, because I only ever played the first and second generations, and then the ninth as well. I bought Pokemon Scarlet when I first got my Switch. So I've done that, but I kind of want to do that. And yeah, I don't know if I want to do video content on all of that or not. I might. I mean, Scarlet might be fun enough to go back and do with its open world aspect and its great graphics, and the fact that the Switch is sitting right here, that we could do that on stream or on Let's Play, but I don't know. That is stuff for an entirely different audience here. We are here to talk news, and we've got a lot of it here. I have so much news sitting up on my tabs right now that all my tabs don't show up on Rumble. And then, of course, I've got another full page of things I like, things I hate. Like when I did the Restream stuff to get everything set up, I had to do that in a full separate window because all my tabs aren't showing up. So anyway, we're going to get down to that. We do have some breaking news this morning is what we're going to start with. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as the Weekly Notice with Stephen Ignoramus. Go check that out. That's a great show. He's going to be on shortly after me, if I am not mistaken, if we don't overlap with each other for a little bit, and I hope we do, because then I can go back and rate his channel. And go check out Crimeland with Katie Zed. That's an awesome show. It's going to be an awesome time. I have started putting the feelers out to new guests for Ed Talk. Scheduling has not happened yet. I know with everything we've got going on this coming weekend, the official weekend, not my weekend, everything we've got going on with this coming weekend, I am not going to schedule anything for next week at all. We're going to take a break in this house and not go and run 1,000 miles an hour everywhere. So after that, then yeah, we're going to start to get some stuff scheduled. I've reached out to Brew, my former gaming co-host, the actual hostess of the show. I was the co-host. I was the sidekick on that one. I reached out to her. We're going to sit down and talk about, well, you've heard I talk, whatever it is that we want to talk about, whatever comes up. I reached out in an email to a fairly prominent social media harp musician. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, just based on my news show, but if you never ask, the answer is always no, so we'll see what happens with this. And a friend of the show, Spartacus, for an experience that he had that is typically contradictory to people that have his view set and belief set. So I think there are going to be some interesting conversations with that as well coming up. But for now, it is time for the news. And like I said, we've got some breaking this morning that's actually going to precede the LA Riot stuff. So I should probably stop filibustering here at some point, and we should probably get started. All right, we're going to start today with Air India. because it only crashed a few hours ago. I think it's like 3 or 4 hours ago that we had a fairly significant airline crash for a jet that was bound for London starting from India. From the Associated Press, a London-bound Air India flight with more than 240 aboard crashes after takeoff from Ahmedabad. I think I put one too many syllables in that. India. From Ajit Solanki and Rajesh Roy. An Air India passenger plane bound for London with more than 240 people on board crashed Thursday in India's northwestern city of Ahmedabad. There were no known survivors, officials said. So 240 souls lost. F in the chat for that. Black smoke billowed from the site while the plane went down in a populated area near the airport in Ahmedabad, a city of more than 5 million and the capital of Gujarat, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state. Firefighters doused the smoking wreckage of the plane, which would have been fully loaded with fuel after takeoff. An adjacent multi-story building with water, many charred bodies lay on the ground, and one was carried away on a stretcher by first responders. I'm guessing that was the one that they thought might have survived. The scenes emerging of a London-bound plane carrying many British nationals crashing in the Indian city of Ahmedabad are devastating, British PM Keir Starmer said in a statement. Which, it's a little bit weird in and of itself that the Brits are weighing in on this immediately based on the fact that this is not a British Commonwealth holding anymore. Indian television news channels reported that the plane crashed on top of the dining area of Medical College Hostel, and visuals showed a portion of the aircraft atop the building. It is unclear if any medical students were present inside the building at the time of the crash. So, interestingly enough, there may be more people who are unaccounted for based on where the plane crashed. And, given the fact that it's in the middle of a city, I do anticipate, unfortunately, that this is going to be a situation where more than just the initial people reported have passed away. It's a sad state of affairs, definitely. As the plane has fallen in a residential area, which also had offices, some locals would have also died, he added. Exact figures on casualties are being ascertained. Modi called the crash heartbreaking beyond words. In this sad hour, my thoughts are with everyone affected, he said in a social media post. So, if you're watching on the video platform and not on the audios, there is Ahmedabad. It's closer to the coast. India is a huge country in and of itself with a bunch of people, but it's closer to the coast than like New Delhi, that is tucked deep inside of Indian territory. And they were on their way out, headed for London. So, very, very sad state of affairs on that. And we've got some of the image of the debris around that. And the Associated Press has decided they want to advertise as well because, well, of course they did. The airline said the Gatwick airport-bound flight was carrying 242 passengers and crew. Of those, Air India said there were 169 Indians, 53 Brits, and 7 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian. Hail Kenyatta. Faiz Ahmed Kidwai, the general director of the Directorate of Civil Aviation, told the Associated Press that Air India Flight 171, a Boeing 787-8, crashed in a residential area called Megani Nagar 5 minutes after taking off at 1:38 p.m. local time. What is the time difference, of course, with there to India? So it is 6:53 p.m. in India right now. So that's almost, well, it's not almost, it's a 10-hour difference. So probably late last night is when this happened for us. Excuse me. Allergies beating me up again. Hopefully it's not going to come pouring through my nose like it did last time. The 787 Dreamliner is a wide-body twin-engine plane. This is the first crash ever of a 787 aircraft, according to the Aviation Safety Network database. Boeing said it was aware of the reports of the crash and was working to gather more information. The craft was introduced in 2009, and more than 1,000 have been delivered to dozens of airlines, according to the Flight Radar 24 website. So, I will say, and again, this is incredibly sad, of the fact that 240 people are presumed lost, plus whoever was in the path to the ground, as it were, because there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of more people in that situation. This is a very, very sad situation. But I can give credit where credit is due. You have got a 16-year-old platform that has never crashed prior to late last night. Ever. That's an impressive track record. With 1,000 of them and probably 1 million flights at this point. That's a good record for a company that is currently under fire for a lot of other things right now with their workmanship and quality. So, I'll give credit where credit is due. I'm not going to try to be ghoulish about the deaths of people, but on the other end of things, that's a good track record. It really is. All right. Let's see if we've got some more updates and details on that. We've got one from ABC. Air India plane carrying 242 crashes in India en route to United Kingdom. We'll look at this one briefly, but this is most likely going to be a full repeat and rehash of what we have already seen. From Kevin Shelby, Charlotte Gardinier, and Prashun Mazumdar. An Air India airliner carrying 242 passengers and crew en route to the UK from India crashed shortly after takeoff in an area near the Ahmedabad airport in India's Gujarat state, local officials and airlines said. Flight departed from Ahmedabad, 1338, carrying 242, Boeing 787-8. Let's see. Initial reports, working to gather more information. Boeing sent a statement. The Indian Director General of Civil Aviation said the plane fell on the ground outside the airport perimeter immediately after it departed from the airport. Video from the site appeared to show the jet disappear below the tree line, which was followed seconds later by a ball of fire and a thick plume of gray smoke. Heavy black smoke was seen coming from the accident site, the Directorate General said in a statement. India's Central Industrial Security Force released photos from the site of the crash, which appear to include civilians and emergency personnel working to put out flaming wreckage. One photo appeared to show the damaged tail of the airplane resting partially inside of a hole in the building. So, that is what we have for that. Our heart goes out to the family of those whose lives were lost in the wreckage and the aftermath that followed. In other news this morning, Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, visionary leader and Summers Poet Laureate, dies at 82 years old. From Hillel Italy. Brian Wilson, the Beach Boys' visionary and fragile leader, whose genius for melody, arrangements, and wide-eyed self-expression inspired Good Vibrations, California Girls, and other summertime anthems made him one of the world's most influential recording artists, has passed away at 82 years old. Wilson's family posted news of his death to his website and social media accounts Wednesday. Further details weren't immediately available. Since May of 24, Wilson had been under a court conservatorship to oversee his personal medical affairs, with Wilson's longtime representative, publicist Gene Sievers, and manager Leanne Hard in charge. The eldest and last surviving of the three musical brothers, Brian played bass, Carl lead guitar, and Dennis drums. He and his fellow Beach Boys rose in the 60s, from local California band to national hitmakers to international ambassadors of surf and sun. Wilson himself was celebrated for his gifts and pitied for his demons. He was one of rock's great romantics. A tormented man who in his peak years embarked on an ever steeper path to oral perfection, the one true sound. The Beach Boys rank among the most popular groups of the rock era with more than 30 singles in the top 40 and worldwide sales of more than 100 million. The 1966 album Pet Sounds was voted number 2 in a 2003 Rolling Stone list of the best 500 albums, losing out, as Wilson had done before, to the Beatles song Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The Beach Boys, who also featured Wilson, cousin Mike Love, and childhood friend Al Jardine, were voted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1988. Wilson feuded with Love over songwriting credits, but peers otherwise adored him beyond envy, from Elton John to Bruce Springsteen to Katy Perry and Carole King. The Who's drummer, Keith Moon, fantasized about joining the Beach Boys. Paul McCartney cited Pet Sounds as a direct inspiration on the Beatles and the ballad God Only Knows as among his favorite songs, often bringing him to tears. That one's one I'm not familiar with, unfortunately. Wilson moved and fascinated fans and musicians long after he stopped having hits. In his later years, Wilson and a devoted entourage of younger musicians performed Pet Sounds in his restored opus, Smile, before worshipful crowds and concert halls. Meanwhile, the Go-Go's, Lindsey Buckingham, and Animal Collective, and Janelle Monáe were among a wide range of artists who emulated him, whether as a master of crafting pop music or as a pioneer of pulling it apart. The Beach Boys' music was like an ongoing party, with Wilson as host and a wallflower. He was a tall, shy, partially deaf, allegedly because of beatings by his father, with a sweet, crooked grin, and he rarely touched a surfboard unless a photographer was around. But out of that lifestyle he observed, and such musical influences as Chuck Berry and the Four Freshmen, he conjured a golden soundscape, sweet melodies and shining harmonies, vignettes of beaches, cars, and girls that resonated across time and climate. So it's interesting, and I've had this debate with Britt at Tweets by Britt over on X over whether or not this is surf music, because I actually do enjoy surf music quite a bit. It's been a little while since I've sat down and listened to it, but the heavy leading guitar, the reverb, and everything else like that. I mean, for anybody who knows me, that's actually not a surprise. And I know that there are probably a lot of metalheads who are into surf music as well, with people alleging that heavy metal without distortion is essentially surf music. With that being said, though, it's still enjoyable. It was probably considered to be more pop and basically more of just what the people wanted than an actual surf music, but it is definitely one to see. It's one to enjoy, and I wish his family off and the best. He's been an inspiration to a lot of people. You can debate till the day that you die whether or not it was surf music or not. Just a brief one, commentary on his music from Chuck Arnold over at the New York Post. How Beach Boys co-founder Brian Wilson, the original Boy of Summer, transformed music as we know it. From Chuck Arnold. I'm picking up sad vibrations. Brian Wilson is now surfing the heavens after his death was announced by his family on Wednesday. The genius of the group he formed with his brothers Carl and Dennis, cousin Mike Love, and their friend Al Jardine. In '61, Wilson was one of the true visionaries of music who defined pop as we know it today. From 63's Surfing USA to 64's I Get Around, 66's Good Vibrations, Wilson defined not only the California sound, but the sound of sunshine, the sound of summer, and the sound of dreams. Inside of his musical mind, there seemed to be a world of endless possibilities. The rest of us could never have imagined as he explored sonic frontiers with his inventive productive techniques, ingenious orchestrations, and lush layered harmonies. While Love was the frontman of the Beach Boys, Wilson was the man. That year, he's got to will that to the Smithsonian, the bard himself, Bob Dylan once said. In many ways, the Beach Boys were the Beatles of American music, even if they haven't always gotten the same respect. Me and Mike were a bit jealous of the Beatles because they took over the whole music scene, Wilson told USA Today about the battle between the bands in 2021. But just as Beatlesque will forever be described, a descriptive adjective rather in music vernacular, Beach Boyish should be too. While Motown was said to have captured the sound of young America in the 60s, so too did Wilson and the Beach Boys. Although the adolescent appeal of songs such as Fun, Fun, Fun and California Girls had sunny simplicity, it belied the depth of artistry underneath the surface. The Beach Boys made it sound so easy, but it wasn't shallow stuff. With Pet Sounds, though, Wilson at its finest moment, that has locked down its place as one of the greatest albums of all time. It was their Sgt. Pepper, the Beatles' '67 classic, that it influenced. Name anything else that sounds more like heaven than the transcendent God Only Knows, We'll Wait. No less than Paul McCartney has called it the greatest song ever written. It was Pet Sounds that blew me out of the water, said McCartney in a '90 interview. First of all, it was Brian's writing. I love the album so much. I figured no one is educated musically till they've heard that album. So, a very, very, very influential part of music history, absolutely. Let's keep going. Alright, let's look at our finance for the day. I promise we're going to get to the LA riots in just a bit. And then spend the next 7 hours talking about it. Yeah. Alright, on the Dow yesterday, breaking just about even at the very end, dropping 1.1 points, 0.0026%. So, roller coaster ride, it went up, it spent most of the day up, it dropped, it tried to peak again, it dropped again, and then tried to climb back up, and finished ourselves out just barely below the break-even line. We'll talk a bit about what happened yesterday, starting with IBD. Stock market today, Dow Jones falls on Trump tariff news, Boeing shares drop after jet crash. From Scott Latonin. Futures for the Dow and other major stock indices traded lower Thursday as Wall Street reacted to a new tariff threats from Trump. Dow component Boeing plunged after one of its jets crashed in takeoff. Meanwhile, more inflation data and the Labor Department's weekly unemployment claims are due on the stock market today. Ahead of the market open, Dow Jones futures dropped 0.7% or more than 300 points. The S&P declined 0.6%, while the Nasdaq was also down 0.6%. The 10-year yield ticked lower to 4.37% Thursday morning. Oil prices, meanwhile, pulled back, with the West Texas Intermediate futures falling near $66.90 a barrel. Among the ETFs, the Invesco QQQ Trust dropped 0.6%, while the SPDR S&P 500 ETF fell 0.6% ahead of the market open. In stocks, Boeing plunged more than 6% in pre-market trade after the Air India Boeing 787 Dreamliner destined for London crashed on departure from Ahmedabad, India, onto the campus of a medical college. The New York Times, a former newspaper, said at least 5 students at the college were killed. So, okay, we're starting to get some numbers in from the ground. A total of 242 people were aboard the jet, but there was no specific information on casualties, though the Times quoted India's health minister saying many people had died. Many people, many sides. Also, Oracle was a big earnings mover on Thursday. As the software giant jumped more than 8%, the company recorded fiscal fourth quarter results that topped expectations. Company executives also said they expect their fiscal 26 revenue to be dramatically higher as Oracle sees benefits from its AI and cloud services push. Excuse me. Stock market today, Trump tariffs news, inflation data, and jobless claims. President Trump told reporters Wednesday that he'll send letters to trading partners within the next 2 weeks, setting unilateral duties ahead of the July 9th deadline, with the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs ends. Due out at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, the Labor Department's Producer Price Index is expected to rise 0.2% for the month, with an annual increase of 2.6% according to estimates from Econoday. The core CPI, which excludes food and energy, is anticipated to rise 0.3% on the month. The year-over-year increase is seen at 3.1%. We'll see how those numbers actually go later on today. Further, weekly initial unemployment claims are expected to fall to 243,000 versus 247,000 in the previous week. According to Econoday, claims have been rising lately, raising concerns about the job market, in spite of the fact that we had a huge jobs report earlier on this week. Elsewhere, Dow Giant Disney broke past a 113.44 buy point in a cup with handle recent sessions. Market surge chart analysis shows shares are in a 5% buy range that goes up to 119.11 as they lost 0.6% in pre-market trading on Thursday. Tuesday's stock of the day was Amazon, which gave a 214.84 cup with handle entry Wednesday. Amazon stock dropped another 0.8% in pre-market trades on Thursday. Finally, Shopify is in a buy range above a 112.38 entry in a cup with handle. Following Wednesday's breakout move, Shopify stock moved down 1.3% in early action on Thursday. The ongoing stock market uptrend proves bullish setting for raising exposure, but investors still need to watch for volatility. Investors should buy stocks with a 21-day average true range or ATR of up to 8%, but they should be wary of being too concentrated in high-octane names. So everything is going up. I don't know where we were told that the economy was going to be destroyed by the tariffs and everything else that goes along with this, but it does seem to be moving in a positive direction. Now, of course, to cede some ground to my left-wing friends, the stock market is not the economy. There are 1,000 other factors that go into the economy and what goes on with that. So that's something else that we're going to have to sit back and watch and see where it goes and see what it does as we go. But yes, we're sitting here, we're looking at positive news, and remember, while the stock market is not the economy, as our friends on the left love to remind us, one of the things that we can look at with the stock market and the economy as it is the fact that the stock market is... I gotta move some things around here. The stock market is where people who studied the economy think that the economy is going to go in the next 30 days. So, alright, let's grab one. Quest Bank says, I'll probably check the beginning and skip most of the financials. The beginning is breaking news on plane crash and Brian Wilson dying. So, you're good there. Quest Fanning, everybody. Our big hype man. Alright, from CNBC. S&P 500 closes lower, snapping a 3-day winning streak. From Pia Singh and Brian Evans. I love the breaking news at the top, which I'm not going to touch on at this point. Stocks fall as Trump threatens unilateral tariffs. He's been doing that for, what are we on now? 6 months? Stocks closed lower on Wednesday as traders weighed a preliminary U.S.-China trade agreement and new inflation data. The market's recent run higher took a breather as major indices ended the session near previous closing levels. The S&P lost 0.2% to end the day at 60.2224, snapping a 3-day win streak. The Nasdaq fell 0.5% to 19,615.88. The Dow shed more than 1.1 points, closing at 42,865.77. The CPI rose 0.1% in May from April, less than the 0.2% estimate. Hey, there's your first good news right there. Excuse me, inflation is cooling. Core CPI, which strips out volatile food and energy prices, also increased 0.1%. Less than expected. Even less than expected, by the way. Inflation in May was lower than anticipated, suggesting tariffs aren't having a large immediate impact because companies have been using existing inventories or slowly adjusting prices due to uncertain demand, said Alexandra Wilson Elizondo, Global Co-CIO of Multi-Asset Solutions at Goldman Sachs Asset Management. I don't know CIO. I don't know that particular abbreviation. I know COO, CFO, CEO, obviously. What is CIO? Excuse me. Goodness. Chief Information Officer is what that one is. Interesting. As we wait for the 90-day tariff pause to pass, the market will be caught between inflation and job prints. If inflation stays under control or the job market weakens, the Federal Reserve will likely consider cutting interest rates down the road, Wilson Elizondo said. Just in time for me to save up some money for closing costs and get out of this ridiculous interest rate that I'm in. Discussions between the US and Chinese officials have been a key focus this week for investors who remain on edge. Regarding trade policy, officials reached a consensus after 2 days of talks in London, but said that they will seek approval on the framework from the US and Chinese presidents before implementing it. As part of the framework, China would approve the exports of rare earths, while the US would roll back restrictions on sale of advanced technology to China. Which means, of course, that they will reverse engineer it, and yeah. The same complaint that we've been hearing since 2015. I'm a little bit upset over the fact that, we're just going to go back and do this in business as usual. But that's also a part of the reason that I didn't initially intend to vote for this current president. Even as the framework is being finalized, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said Wednesday that U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports will not change from their current levels. President Trump said earlier in a Truth Social post, the deal with China is done, subject to final approval with Winnie the Pooh and me. As part of the deal framework, he said that magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied upfront by China, and the U.S. will allow Chinese students to attend U.S. colleges and universities, adding that we're getting a total of 55% tariffs. China is getting 10. Crude oil futures rose more than 4% on Wednesday on news of escalating tensions in the Middle East, particularly after sources told Reuters that the U.S. was... Oh, Jesus. I didn't even think about that. When I started doing the news stuff for the Iranian stuff that's going to be at the bottom of the news stack, I didn't even think of that. Oh, your gas prices are going up again. Unless we do some major drill baby drill here, which I was pleasantly impressed by how far down they are right now. Particularly after sources told Reuters the U.S. was preparing partial evacuation of its embassy in Iraq due to heightened security risks in the region. So, we've got that going on. Let's grab one more from CNBC on the jobs report that happened right after we got off air last week. U.S. payrolls increased 139,000 in May, more than expected, unemployment at 4.2%. From Jeff Cox. Hiring decreased just slightly in May, even as consumers and companies braced against tariffs and potentially slowing economy, the BLS reported on Friday. Non-farms rose 139,000 for the month, above the muted Dow estimate of 125 and a bit below the downwardly revised 147 that the U.S. economy added in April. The unemployment rate held steady at 4.2%, a more encompassing measure that includes discouraged workers and the underemployed, also was unchanged, holding at 7.8%. And that is your workforce participation, by the way. That's the other statistic that we'd like to talk about politically when Joe Biden goes up and says, I got the lowest unemployment in history, man, come on. Or Barack Obama doing the same in the Great Recession. Stronger than expected job growth and stable unemployment underlines the resilience of the U.S. labor market in the face of recent shocks, said Lindsay Rosner, head of multi-sector fixed income investment at Goldman Sachs Asset Management. Nearly half the job growth came from healthcare, which added 62K, even higher than the average gain of 44K in the past year. Leisure and hospitality contributed to 48,000, while social assistance added to 16,000, which, and again, a reminder that's on that job report that is a little bit rosier than you'd like to think is, keep in mind what month it is. It is June, last month is May, which means that either this week or this past week or the week before was when most of our kids were getting out of school and going and grabbing tourism and restaurant jobs. The campgrounds are opening back up, so that's a lot of jobs that are there that weren't there before. These aren't big career jobs that are being added onto this. Well, there are some of those too, but we've got 48,000 part-time jobs that are going to not exist come September. So keep that in mind as we're weighing where the market goes. This is not official financial advice. Do consult your financial advisor for the advice that pertains particularly to your specific financial situation and your family. All right, you guys, are you ready for the title card? What we're going to talk about from the title of the show? Are you ready? It's time. No, it is not April 29th, 1992. It is not May 26th, 2020. It is not August 23rd, 2020. No, we have another riot in the streets. And it looks like there are possibly going to be some more coming on Saturday. We'll talk about this at the top, or the bottom rather, of the news section. But there's a lot to go over here on the LA riots. So, here we go. Trump sends a clear message federalizing National Guard for LA riots. This is not 2020. From Diana Stancy. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm thinking on this one, and I am not in favor of the National Guard presence in this as far as turning against civilians or trying to quell the riots. I'm okay with the riots happening, I'm not going to lie, because they're mostly going to be contained into the home communities of the people who are rioting. A lot of the people who are going to be down there rioting live within a couple miles of the center of where the riots are going to happen. I do agree, and we're going to talk a bit more about what happened with this and how this all started, but I do agree with the idea of using the National Guard to protect the ICE agents directly. Whether they need to get evacuated and they need assistance with that, or whether it is, in fact, that they're protecting that building, the federal building, etc., like that. But yeah, using them to quell the riots, I'm not in favor of. Same with the Marines. Not in favor of that. In fact, I'm going to say right off the bat, I think that if the Insurrection Act does come out, the Trump man's political career is over. And I say this knowing the fact that his political enemies spent a large part of 2020 trying to incite the Insurrection Act so they can come out and say, he's Hitler, he's cracking down, he's taking on his political enemies, he's turned the military on his political enemies. But yes, having the Guard out there in a strictly defensive role for other federal agents and federal buildings, I do tend to agree with. Let the people go out and do stupid crap. They're going to do their stupid crap. And the LA Sheriff's Department and other paramilitary forces are going to be standing at the edge of Beverly Hills, or what's left of that after the fires, to make sure that nobody gets into the rich people's places, that the rich people are continued to be comforted away from all this. You know how I know that? Because that's what they did in 2020. Alright, let's read from Fox News. As riots and immigration protests grip Los Angeles, President Trump is determined not to repeat the violence of 2020. Where is this, by the way? Where is this happening? We're going to get a map. I know the Mogwai says that we get extra show every time we get a map, and we never do. Mostly because I do this on my last weekend day, but let's find out where this is actually happening. Let's see if the maps show me first. No, they're showing me like Riot games and stuff like that. That's not what I want. I want to see where this is actually happening. Alright. Wish we could get Britt on it short notice, because she would know a lot more about this than I would. That's not what I wanted. So yeah, we're down by Compton. We're down by what most people would consider to be a seedy or a poor neighborhood. Fashion district, I'm a little surprised by, because that's outside of downtown, and that's typically a little bit more upscale, and then, yes, by federal buildings. So it seems to be somewhat localized. They're on the 101 California Highway Patrol. Yeah. They're not really showing what I wanted to see off of this. I kind of wanted to see if we're going to be sitting in a situation again, like I had said, where they're just going out and burning out the poorer neighborhoods and getting stopped as they get towards Beverly Hills. Now, and yeah, I mentioned Compton, obviously, which we all know from that movie, Straight Outta Compton, is not a place where the people from Malibu tend to go. But unless you're born and bred from Los Angeles, that map that CBS showed is not going to really show you anything and tell you anything. Let's see. Let me see if the USA Today does anything differently. Yeah. No. You're far away from the coast. This is a little bit clearer map that I can see here. But yeah, you've got downtown, which is typically in most major cities an underserved and, dare I say, poorer neighborhood. I don't know how it is in Los Angeles. You got Compton, obviously, and Paramount. I don't know how Paramount compares to Compton or anything. I mean, I think Paramount and I think the TV production studio. And then, yeah, several places within this region, which I'm not familiar with, but doesn't seem like you're in Torrance, Long Beach, Santa Monica, places like that. So, yeah, unless, again, you know more about Los Angeles than I ever will, because I'll never set foot there, that map's not going to tell us a whole lot. The majority of what I know about Los Angeles is from my friend that used to live there and watching things like 2.5 Men, or conversely on the other end of things, Karate Kid and Cobra Kai. Alright, well, let's get back over to the news. In recent days, the Trump admin officials have pointed to the riots that broke out in Minneapolis in 20 after the death of St. George, hallowed be his name, at the hands of a white police officer, singling out Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for slow-walking the activation of the National Guard. Now Trump is at odds with another Democratic governor, this time Gavin Newsom, as the president moves to deploy and federalize thousands of National Guard troops, along with hundreds of Marines, in an effort to prevent LA from suffering the same fate as Minneapolis. Again, I ask the question, why? It's what they clearly want in their own neighborhood that they voted for. Why stop them? But Trump and his allies have persisted with a clear message for Democrats: this is not 2020. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who previously served as governor of South Dakota, defended the Trump admin's decision to deploy the federalize troops and override the state authority, claiming Minnesota is an example of what happens when a bad governor is in charge. I was governor of a neighboring state to Tim Walz and watched him let his city burn, Noem told reporters on Tuesday. And the president and I have talked about this in the past, and he's not going to let that happen to another city and to another community where a bad governor made a bad decision. Other admin officials expressed similar sentiments. This isn't the summer of 2020. Deputy Secretary Troy Edgar said in a statement on Monday, "I think the brave men and women of the National Guard defending federal buildings so that the immigration officials can keep us safe." Walz is the first elected governor of Minnesota in 2019, leading the state as protests broke out after the death of St. George. While Walz has said he takes the blame for the delayed response in activating the Guard in his state, he's also said he's proud of how Minnesota reacted. I mean, he is actually absolutely 100% at fault for the delayed response in the National Guard. But again, I allege and point out that that was most likely deliberate. There was a reason that they did that. And the reason they did that was to try to goad, well, the reaction that we're getting right now. The Insurrection Act. Evil Hitler, like, little mustache. Concentration camps. I mean, I can already see the headlines, and I predicted this in 2020. Hell, you can go back to my stuff from election coverage back in November. I saw this coming back then. Walz goes on, I'm proud of Minnesota's response. I'm proud of Minnesota's first responders who were out there, from firefighters to police to National Guard to citizens that were out there, Walz said in a 2022 gubernatorial debate. Walz's office did not respond to a request for comment from Fox News Digital. The political climate is also different for Trump this time around, whereas in 2020, Trump faced an upcoming election. He no longer has a second term on his mind, influencing his actions, according to political columnist Kristen Tate. Trump has learned a lot in the last 5 years. Trump no longer cares about political consequences. He cannot run again. So he's just doing what's right, Tate told Fox News Digital. He's instilling law and order, regardless of consequences, and that's what should have been done all along. But the rioters in the Golden State are shocked to see that law and order is being implemented, and the good old days of burning down the city with impunity are over. Trump has also moved to exert greater authority over the National Guard than he did in 2020, bypassing Newsom's authority, while Republicans like Tom Cotton of Arkansas pushed Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act of 2020 to pave the way for Trump to federalize the National Guard. Trump ultimately chose not to. Although separate from the Insurrection Act, Trump has invoked another law to place National Guard troops under federal command at this time, prompting an ire from Newsom and other Democrats. Additionally, Newsom has filed a lawsuit against the Trump admin for federalizing the National Guard, labeling the move as an unmistakable step towards authoritarianism. Bruh, Donald Trump is creating fear and terror by failing to adhere to the U.S. Constitution and overstepping his authority, bruh, Newsom said in a statement on Monday. This is a manufactured crisis to allow him to take over a state militia, damaging the very foundation of our republic. Every governor, red or blue, should reject this outrageous overreach, bro. Well, I mean, Newsom is right about one thing. This is a manufactured crisis, just not in the way that he is trying to sell this in his statement. And this is 100% a manufactured crisis, too, by the way. Alright. U.S. Northern Command, with a press release, new U.S. Northcom statement on additional military personnel in LA area. Peterson Space Force Base in Colorado, the U.S. Northern Command has activated the Marine Infantry Battalion that was placed on alert status over the weekend. Approximately 700 Marines with 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Marine Division will seamlessly integrate with the Title 10 forces under Task Force 51 for protecting federal personnel and federal property in the greater LA area. As of June 10th of 25, there are approximately 2,100 soldiers from the 79th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, a California National Guard unit, in a Title 10 status in the greater LA area. The activation of the Marines is intended to provide Task Force 51 with adequate numbers of forces to provide continuous coverage of the area in support and of the lead federal agency. So they're serving in a backup role. Still not thrilled about that, by the way, but they are serving in a backup role. Task Force 51 is U.S. Army North's contingency command post, which provides a rapidly deployable capability to partner with civil authorities and DoD entities in response to Homeland Defense and Homeland Security operations. It is commanded by Major General Scott M. Sherman. He is a fine example of a modern Major General. Task Force 51 is comprised of approximately 2,100 National Guard soldiers in a Title 10 status and 700 active duty Marines. Task Force 51 has been trained in de-escalation, crowd control, and standing rule for the use of force. So, a few things that go along with that. Now, and tensions are high. People are angry. People are going to go back. And yes, there are people who are trying to instigate. With that being said, the intent that is written into this Northern Command statement is one of strict defense. How that is going to happen in practice, I don't know yet. I know that we're sitting here in a situation where ICE authorities went into a Home Depot to attempt to execute ICE warrants and deportation orders. The locals, whether organic or goaded, did not like this very much and turned around and started to riot and protest, throwing rocks at the federal officials. The National Guard was activated in order to protect the officials. And per the sources, the violence escalated from there. Now we are coming to a point where there is looting, there is rioting, there are fires. Because nothing says that I'm angry with the federal government than stealing a new iPhone. Alright, we're going to keep going here. From the Associated Press, what you know about the protests over Trump's immigration crackdown in LA and other cities. Which, by the way, I do apologize for. I try not to put repeat sources, one right after another. But the only people who were really putting useful information up when I was building the stack last night were Newsweek and Fox News. So, bear with me for this segment. Not this particular segment, but a couple articles down, we're going to start getting into Newsweek, Fox News, Newsweek. From the Associated Press, what to know about the protests over Trump's immigration crackdown in the U.S. and other cities, from Christopher Weber. Downtown LA bustled Wednesday with dog walkers and commuters as it returned to business as usual after the first night of curfew met to tamp down tensions following days of protest over Trump's immigration crackdown. There were no signs of the 700 Marines the president deployed to the city. Major General Scott Sherman, who's overseeing Trump's troop deployment, said the Marines were undergoing civil disobedience training at a naval facility in Orange County. And it's unclear if they'll join the roughly 4,000 National Guard members. It's 4,000 now, because the last report was 2,100. National Guard members protecting federal buildings and immigration agents making arrests in the LA area. About 500 of the Guard troops deployed to the protests have been trained to accompany agents on immigration operations, he said. I don't know how I feel about that one specifically. Sherman initially said the National Guard troops had temporarily detained some civilians. He later said he was incorrect, and said he had based his comments on photos and footage he had seen that turned out to be a representation of Guard members in Los Angeles. I'm sorry, not to be a representation of Guard members in Los Angeles. Police said they detained more than 200 people from Tuesday through Wednesday morning, mostly failing to disperse. But there were fewer clashes between protesters and police. That brought the total number of LA protesters who were detained or arrested since Saturday to nearly 400. Protests over the immigration crackdown have been held in major cities throughout the U.S. in recent days. Karen Bass joined fellow Democrat mayors across the country Wednesday in calling for ends to the raids, which she called a provocation by the White House. This, by the way, is going to be a long debate over who started it. I feel like I'm about to be a parent when I say this. I don't care who started. Finish it. Although critics accused Trump of manufacturing the crisis for political gain and sowing chaos, the president said on social media that LA would have been completely obliterated if he hadn't sent the Guard members there over the weekend. No, it would probably be Compton, and probably Reseda would have been completely obliterated. Malibu and Pasadena, Beverly Hills, Sherman Oaks would have been largely untouched. Here are some things to know about the protests, troop deployment, and showdowns between local, state, and federal officials. We have a curfew now. We'll be talking about that a little bit later. Raids sparked protests elsewhere. Although the crackdown and protests have been prominent in LA, demonstrators have been rallying against the immigration crackdown in other major cities, including Dallas and Austin, Chicago, Denver, New York, where thousands rallied and multiple arrests were made. Yeah, we'll be talking about the stuff that's supposed to be happening on Saturday here in a little bit. New York City police took 86 people into custody during protests in around Lower Manhattan's Foley Square overnight Tuesday into Wednesday. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said the vast majority of demonstrators were peaceful. Demonstrators critical of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency returned to Lower Manhattan on Wednesday evening. No Kings rallies critical of Trump are planned nationwide for Saturday to coincide with the president's scheduled military parade in Washington. We'll be talking about that separately. Republican support for the crackdown. This is where I fall in separately because, well, as you all know, I am not a Republican. Florida man Ron DeSantis, a Republican, said states don't have the right to just simply opt out of federal immigration law. Officers with the Texas Public Safety Department said the Texas National Guard was present at a protest in downtown San Antonio on Wednesday. Members were not seen standing with law enforcement in front of the small crowd of demonstrators. Republican Governor Wheels had refused to disclose details of his mobilization of the Texas National Guard troops ahead of planned protests in the city. He had not said if he or the president mobilized them. In California, Trump took the rare step of deploying troops despite the objections of the California Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat. What's behind the demonstrations? Where did this all start? The protests, which started Friday in downtown LA before spreading Saturday to the neighboring cities of Compton and Paramount, have been driven by anger over Trump's stepped-up enforcement of immigration laws. The area presents a ripe target for the raids, as an estimated 10% of LA County residents weren't in the country legally. That's a bunch, by the way. You know there are like 10 million people in LA County? I knew there were a bunch of people there, I just didn't realize it was that many. Stephen Miller, professional agitator and propagandist, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff and Chief Architect of Trump's immigration policy, said late last month U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement should make at least 3,000 arrests a day. That would make a dramatic increase from January 20th to May 19th, when the agency made an average of 656 arrests a day. Immigrant advocates say the workers being detained, including some in the Garment District, do not have criminal histories and are being denied due process. Advocates for car wash workers said that only 2 of the 26 people detained since the weekend, 25 workers and a customer, had been located. One of unaccounted for workers was Jaslyn Hernandez's father, who was supposed to watch her graduate on Wednesday. We've been not able to find him, and that's not fair, Hernandez said. And Newsom clashing with Trump, of course. Newsom has asked the court to put an emergency stop to the military helping federal immigration agents. The judge set a hearing for Thursday, that's later today, giving the admin several days to continue those activities. The change moves troops closer to engaging in law enforcement actions like deportations, as Trump had promised as part of his crackdown. The Guard can temporarily detain people who attack officers, but any arrest would be made by law enforcement. Correct, because the military cannot make an arrest directly. ICE said in a statement that the troops were providing security at federal facilities and protecting federal officers. Newsom, in a public address on Tuesday, called Trump's actions the start of an assault on democracy. It's not an assault on democracy, it's an assault on Democrats. There's a difference. Bruh, California may be the first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next, bro, he said. Meanwhile, Press freedom advocates suggest that journalists covering the protests might have been targeted. Reporters Without Borders said Wednesday there have been at least 36 attacks on journalists, 30 from law enforcement, since the demonstrations began. Yeah, don't do that. And we've got video of that as well, by the way. Don't do that. That's bad. Person's got a press pass. Clearly speaking in front of a camera. They have the freedom of the press to do so. We are not Biden's DOJ. We do not arrest independent streamers and charge them with riot and conspiracy to commit riot. That one's for you, Stephen. We don't do that. God, that would be the same as a National Guard sniper outside the Capitol on January 6th, pointing a rubber bullet at Stephen Ignoramus while he clearly has a cell phone in each hand and no hands to touch any sort of weapon otherwise, streaming the whole thing out for the world to see, and putting a rubber bullet in the middle of his head. Yeah, and he actually did do that too. George Sears, 2028 voter, the cop in this very deliberately lines her up, shoots her. I'm sure more money for training and equipment will fix whatever's wrong with him, though, with a news link before that. Australian news link for that. And yeah, we've got the video lineup. Pop the unarmored person who does have a paint mask for tear gas with a microphone clearly talking to a camera. Look, again, I know tensions are high, but we are not the Biden administration. The Biden administration is not in charge of the DOD or the DOJ. This is stuff that Biden admin officials do. Alright, I got a back-to-back from Daily Wire, rather. Might have to go and close that window. It's really, really nice out, so I opened the window, but given the fact that I face a major highway out this room, we might not be able to continue with that. Which, again, is a shame, because it is really, really, really nice out here. California Democrat says ICE raids are domestic terrorism. You guys got to stop using that word because you're diluting it, just like Nazi and racist and sexist and everything else that you've diluted over this past election cycle. From Tim Pierce, a California Democrat, on Wednesday said that immigration enforcement of the Los Angeles area constitutes a form of domestic terrorism. The representative from California has the floor. Representative Sidney Kamlager-Dubb appeared on CNN's The Arena and accused the Trump admin of carrying out domestic terrorism by enforcing immigration law. I would argue that this is not immigration policy that we're seeing unfold. This is domestic terrorism. Kamlager-Dubb told host Brianna Keeler before going on to claim that Americans do not support immigration and customs enforcement deportation raids. Well, the polls would show otherwise. A recent poll by CBS News found that a majority of Americans support President... And you need to pre-read these before I make commentary because that's exactly what I just said. Found that a majority of Americans support President Trump's deportation agenda. Deportation has notched a net approval rating of +8. Of course, we always look at the aggregate. We don't look at individual polls. The poll was completed just before the deportation raids and riots began in the LA area. I would be curious to see where it goes after that. Grab one from RCP. I looked at the aggregate the other day, which, by the way, is looking fantastic for the Trump administration, but I want to look at specifically what the immigration one is. And yes, we should all be using RCP. I use that as one of my main aggregators. Ha! Ha ha! Oh, I could probably still click that because of the restream keeping the message in here. Boostmap.ru. That seems completely legit, right? Hey, let's go click on that. Nose Caponer 8920. Egon. Alright. Trump job approval. Let's grab this one from RCP. So on the aggregate right now, and somebody also tried to claim on X yesterday that presidents that have 38 approval ratings don't get to have birthday parades, which this is a Flag Day parade, not a birthday parade. We'll be talking... Actually, no. I chose not to cover that one. And I posted a screenshot of this and I said, oh, because, again, you can make any poll that you want, say whatever it is that you want, by manipulating who it is that you ask. I mean, we've got spreads as far as +11 and positive of the president right now. That's why we use aggregates. And realistically, like, that one, that one, that one, that one, and that one, of course, are all devastating to the president. But realistically, you could just go and throw all those out as well, because it's adults are the only factor of who we're sitting out here and polling. They don't know if they're politically active. They don't know if there's anything else behind them. I like the registered. Like, if I went through and changed an aggregate, if I did my own aggregate and started collecting polls like this, I would put weight on this. Like the LV, the likely voters polls, would be weighted as 1. The registered voters, I would weight them as like 1.5. I wouldn't weight them as high as 2. And if I kept the polls of just adults, random adults that they pick up off the street or whatever the hell, I would weight that at like 0.5%. Or not 0.5%, but I would weight them at half weight in the polling. Because likely voters are people who want to go back and see either the policies continue or to see the change. And registered voters are people who actually have skin in the game, who are registered to vote, who actively are going to have a plan to go back and vote. So, but anyway, let's go back to immigration. Trump approval on issues, immigration. And yes, again, on the RCP average, we use the aggregate. We don't use the CBS poll. Even though the last CBS poll was a tie, we use the aggregator that says that on average, across all the polls, even with the ones that say adults, which both of those are a dead 50-50, we're at a 2.3 point spread over who approves versus who disapproves. And if we weighted these things all properly, even with the Quinnipiac, which is registered voters, we'd probably still be around 3 to 5%. Nuria has joined us, and Quest Fanning says the reason is to protect them from the reason to not protect them from who they voted for is because the rights of the individual, including the ones who didn't vote blue, matter more than the consensus or anything else. So anyway, there's our immigration. And a good lesson on aggregators as well. Let's go back to this one. Another poll, this one conducted by RMG Research, released Wednesday, and taken 2 days after the president ordered the National Guard troops into LA, found the majority of Americans support the president's handling of the riots. 58% of the respondents say they're at least generally supportive of the admin's efforts to deport illegal aliens. 52% of respondents said that they support the president's decision to send in the National Guard. Keeler followed up on Kamlager Dove's comment, pressing California Democrat on her use of domestic terrorism. Keeler asked specifically if the elected lawmaker was referring to ICE raids as domestic terrorism. The elected Democrat is using domestic terrorism as anything that she doesn't like, by the way. Oh, we've got video of this one.
So there are a lot of polls that are all over the place. I would argue that this is not an immigration policy that we're seeing unfold. This is domestic terrorism. Yes, actually last term there was a bipartisan piece of immigration reform legislation that Donald Trump asked Republicans to kill because he didn't want Biden to sign it. We know that Americans support immigration reform. We know that Democrats support immigration reform, but they do not support ICE raids like this happening
Can I just
in communities.
follow up with
Sure.
you? You said this is domestic terrorism. Can you just tell me what exactly you mean? Are you saying the ICE raids are domestic terrorism?
So what I'm saying is when you have grandmothers taking young children to church or to the grocery store or to a little Korean market like the one that was in my district that was raided, and all of a sudden you see masked individuals with no identification, producing no judicial warrants that have names on it, asking no questions, snatching people, putting them in a van, carting them off, detaining them, not informing their parents or family members, not even allowing Congress members to go in and check and make sure that everything is okay, and then deporting them, you have a real problem. We have 9-year-old children being that, yes, I would argue that you are terrorizing communities.
I would not argue that. I would argue, however, that the people who are coming here that are illegal and illegally staying in the country without making any sort of effort to rectify the fact that they're illegally in the country do understand the risks that are before them. And for whatever reason, give it political dissonance in their home country, give it there's a warrant or something following them, be it economic opportunity, whatever, they've weighed the risk and found that the reward is likely better than what the risk is facing them if they had gone and done nothing. I'm not condoning their behavior, but I'm also saying that they know the risk that if they're doing this illegally, then yes, they might run in front of Immigration and Customs Enforcement and out the door you went. That's where I wouldn't say that this is domestic terrorism. Alright, so we only get to read a part of this one. I will read a little bit of this based on the fact that it's Ben Shapiro, but I am probably going to disagree with old Benny Boy because, well, let's face it, he's wrong a lot. He kind of answers to a different power. From the Daily Wire, the real agenda behind the chaos in Los Angeles. Let's see what Benny Boy thinks that this actually is. What is the real reason we're seeing chaos in the streets of LA? One protester explained why exactly is this happening. If you want to know what drives the mindset of the rioters, then you really should take some time and listen to the people who are rioting, who are attempting to attack police officers and ICE agents. This protester was, of course, masked and wearing sunglasses. He bloviated. Everyone has the same enemy. From LA to Africa to Palestine and Vietnam. We all have the same enemy. There's one enemy, and it's not me, and it's not you. Okay, gang, and it's not them. We're not the enemies of each other. He pointed to police, declaring, okay, gang, they are the enemy. Okay, there's only one enemy, and we all have to work together in unison to fight this enemy, okay? Another protester interjected, okay, gang, that's right, that's capitalism, imperialism, and Zionism. The faster we grow, the more we grow as people, and the quicker that we can get to this revolution, overturn this motherfucker. And we have real people leading this country, the first protester continued. They hate all the isms, like the free market, that they bought and paid for with their prosperity so they can waste their time in the middle of a day in Los Angeles, okay, gang, and yelling at police, and imperialism, okay, which is presumably the reason that they're standing on the soil of America, because most American people are not originally native to America. He says Zionism, the belief that there ought to be a Jewish state, there ought not to be a Jewish state in Israel. What the hell does that have to do with illegal immigration in Los Angeles? The answer is for him and his ilk. They're all the same enemy. The system. Blame the system, okay, for all your problems and rip down the system, okay? See? I told you that Benny Boy was going to be 100% wrong. Did I not say that? That is not what's driving these protesters. That's not what's driving these riots. What's driving these riots is a level of people out here who have been told that certain groups of people are there, and the entire reason that they can't get ahead, they can't do anything else, they have to live in squalor, they have to live in poverty, in spite of the fact that many of them are upper crust, upper middle class, and have a salary that could buy and sell the house that I'm sitting in right now 7 times over, or their parents have a trust fund that could buy and sell this house 7 times over. In spite of all that. But the real reason behind all of this is because it's going to look very, very good for their political cause if the current president incites the Insurrection Act and starts cracking down and putting people in prison who are particularly going to be perceived as, quote, political enemies of the president because they, quote, voted Democrat. That's what this driver is for. That's exactly what it was in the St. George riots. That's exactly what it was in the St. Jacob riots. And that's exactly what we are seeing right now. So no, sorry Ben, you are wrong. As usual. KTLA 5 with the interesting question, especially coming from an LA news source. Who is rioting in downtown LA? Demonstrators or habitual agitators? From Josh DeBose. As a 5th day of anti-ICE protests continued into the typically volatile evening hours, a state of emergency and curfew in a portion of downtown LA are now in place. Many across Southern California and the nation are asking who's inciting the violence, committing the vandalism, and doing the looting. Is it demonstrators or habitual agitators? In a Tuesday evening press conference, Karen Bass announced the curfew in a single square mile area downtown between the 110, 10, and 5. Including Skid Row, Chinatown, Little Tokyo, and the Fashion District. The curfew, which began this evening at 8 p.m. and goes until 6 a.m., is expected to remain in place for at least several days. Bass warned that anyone attempting to remain in the curfew zone after 8 p.m., with limited exceptions, will be subject to arrest. Last night there were 23 businesses that were looted, the mayor said. I think that if you drive through downtown LA, the graffiti is everywhere. That's just a normal day in downtown LA. That has nothing to do with what's going on out there right now. And it's caused significant damages to businesses and a number of properties. On Monday, Bass expressed her deep frustration with those choosing to engage in illegal behavior, using the cover of immigrants' rights as a reason to cause mayhem. I just say to anybody that does that, don't come and say you're supporting immigrants' rights. You can't possibly be supporting immigrants and vandalize our city, she said. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. You will be arrested. It might not happen that day, so don't think because you went home that night that you're free. There's a lot of videotape investigations that will take place, and you will be held accountable. And frankly, you need to be separated from people who are fighting on behalf of our immigrant community. On Sunday, LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell highlighted the level of violence Police have battled from Molotov cocktail that hit an officer to 2 motorcyclists reportedly ramming skirmish lines to cinder blocks smashed into rocks, passed around and lobbed at police, and commercial-grade fireworks launched into force. That can kill you, McDonnell emphasized. The night of June 9th also devolved into a stretch of 5 Waymo driverless taxis on North LA Street near Arcadia Street, tagged with graffiti and lit on fire, sending flames and clouds of toxic black smoke in the air. And that was electric too, I think. So that on top of that means that was lithium smoke. That was probably a pain in the ass, excuse my language, to get put out. These are people who are all hooded up. They've got face masks on, the chief said. They're people who do this all the time. They get away with and whatever they can and go from one civil unrest situation to another using similar tactics. Some would call them anarchists. They're not anarchists. I can tell you that right off the bat. They're not anarchists because they are pushing a specific government agenda. But they're people we run across routinely, city to city. It's what they do. Even more disgusting is that many people doing this come from other places to hurt people and to cause havoc. As of late afternoon Tuesday, police said that nearly 200 people have been arrested on various charges. When the mayor of LA is telling you to stop looting, you're doing too much looting. Some of the fuel to this. Lefty nonprofits are openly fueling the LA riots by handing out F-Ice protective gear. This is from the New York Post. Jared Downing, Isabel Vincent, and Alex Oliveira reporting. Left-wing nonprofits are openly helping to fuel anti-ICE riots here by handing out F-Ice packs with protective equipment as protesters continue to take over downtown every night and engage in rolling battles with cops, federal agents, and National Guard troops. Chilling footage revealed one unidentified group handing out a truckload of face shields and other riot gear to protesters in downtown LA. The F-Ice packages were censored for obvious reasons, which include goggles, face masks, gloves, and phone number for jail support, are being assembled and distributed by a nonprofit called Operation Healthy Hearts. It's just one of several organizations that started as grassroots community aid agencies, but have been wading into politics and throwing their weight behind left-wing street protests. At least one group received federal funding before the Trump admin turned off the spigot. The federal government cut off funding for other reasons, so we really have nothing left to lose, LA Poverty Department COO Pamela Miller told the Post. I wonder how much of that U.S. aid money is being used for that specifically. That group, an arts nonprofit that operates the Skid Row History Museum and Archive, allowed another organization to use its building to distribute PPE packages for protesters on Monday. Among the items available at the museum were anarchist pamphlets that advocate for setting police cars on fire, burning down police precincts, and targeting banks and ATMs as part of a direct action against authorities. Now, as far as the protective equipment goes, I do have some problem with that. The police currently use several non-lethal tactics to try to hold the riots down, and as Quest Fanning said, in the reason to not protect them from who they voted for is because of the rights of the individual, to try to tamp down some of these protests so the innocent people who are not out tearing things up in the street don't get hurt, don't lose everything over this, and etc. So police will use things like tear gas, or rubber bullets, or beanbag guns, or pepper balls. I remember it wasn't during the St. George riots, it was before that. It was at a protest outside of one of President Trump's speeches in his first term. We got footage of a guy taking a pepper ball square in his balls and dropping to the ground immediately. But they use these tactics so that the crowds will disperse and say, hey, it's not worth it to come back out and do this kind of stuff without having to kill anybody. But if you take protections against these things so you continue to go out, the only way that they can go back and disperse the crowds is to, well, I don't want to have to finish the sentence for you guys, but you take away some of the tools in the toolkit that before you get up to that point is the issue. When you sit here and put your gas mask on, your body armor on, and things like that. And I don't want to see anybody die over any of this, honestly. Anybody. The pamphlets also include instructions how to thwart police anti-riot tactics. And exactly, that's it. If these things can't get dispersed by non-lethal means, then yes, the only thing that's left to do is lethal means. And I don't want it to come down to that. Miller, however, dismissed the violence that occurred in LA every night as a few knuckleheads doing stupid crap. The immigrant community is important and they are vulnerable, ICE said. We want to get rid of the criminals. Then where are they going? To churches, to schools? Miller said they're targeting people who can't protect themselves. So, second one from the Post. ICE busts during LA riots include child molesters, killers, and Molotov cocktail menace as DHS rips protesters in fighting to protect criminals. From Jenny Terre and Alex Oliveira. The Trump admin on Wednesday paraded a rogues gallery of criminal migrants that are being backed by violent anti-ICE rioters in LA, including child molesters, murderers, and drug dealers. One of the worst illegal immigrant offenders, Emiliano Garduno Galvez, was busted during Saturday's unrest and charged with attempted murder for allegedly hurling a Molotov cocktail at LA County Sheriff's deputies. Garduno Galvez had already been deported from the U.S. once and arrested twice last year, but he was on the loose because California sanctuary laws mean ICE detention orders were ignored by local cops, according to the Department of Homeland Security. These are the types of criminal illegal aliens that rioters are fighting to protect, said DHS Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs Tricia McLaughlin. The LA rioters will not stop us or slow us down. At least 330 illegal immigrants have been arrested in LA. That must be a typo. At least 330 illegal immigrants have been arrested in the LA ICE riots, I'm guessing is what it is, so far, according to the White House. In addition to Garduno Galvez, ICE highlighted 9 other criminals, including killers and child molesters, whom agents had picked up this week in spite of the protests that have raged downtown. Hang on, gotta check on something here. No. Okay. Get this back in. Among the arrests was Gerardo Antonio Palacios, a Mexican national with prior convictions for homicide and burglary. He was previously deported. Matthew Kleb, a 53-year-old from Cambodia, was convicted of drug activity, battery, and lewd action with a child. And Sang Lawing Prasert, a 66-year-old illegal immigrant from Laos, was arrested and also been convicted for lewd acts with a child. Others arrested had previous convictions for drug dealing, assault, money laundering, human smuggling, and burglary, with most hailing from Honduras or Mexico. They were just the latest round of illegal immigrants with alarming criminal backgrounds who have been pulled from the streets of LA and Southern California by ICE raids. Other scary suspects who were previously arrested included convicted mass shooter Quang Chan Fan, a 49-year-old who shot up a high school graduation party in '94, leaving 2 teens dead, along with 55-year-old Rolando Veneracion Enriquez, a Filipino who was convicted of attempted rape. Armando Ordaz, 44, was also arrested and a conviction for sexual battery, while 55-year-old Lionel Sanchez Laguna was arrested with convictions to his name for willful cruelty to a child and other violent charges. Charming people, these are, indeed. Garduno Galvez, the alleged bomb thrower, was seen masked and hooded, prowling behind a tree near fellow protesters and casing out the approaching police line with a mysterious bottle at his feet, according to a video released by ICE. At one point, he menacingly flicked a lighter and stared into the flames to make sure it was working, footage shows. He was quickly captured after the alleged bombing and charged with attempted murder, but not only has he been deported before, but LA officials previously ignored ICE detainers, requesting he be handed over after he was arrested twice last year for DUI and grand theft, a DHS official told the Post. So, and that's been one of the main arguments that the rioters are using is the fact that, okay, well, these people are going out and they're arresting good citizens and business owners and things like that. Well, there's 330 people with past criminal convictions right there. All right, Apple and Adidas stores among businesses looted and damaged in downtown LA. Jonathan Lloyd and Lauren Coronado, NBC4 Los Angeles, an Apple Store and other downtown LA businesses were looted and damaged after largely peaceful protests during daylight hours turned violent on Monday evening and led to more than 100 arrests during a fourth day of demonstrations over immigration enforcement raids. As of Tuesday, the department store reported 96 arrests for failure to disperse on Monday in the downtown area, who were largely peaceful protests during the day turned violent in the evening. Again. There was one arrest for assault with a deadly weapon, one for resisting arrest, and another for vandalism, police said. The LAPD reported 14 arrests for looting. 2 LAPD officers were injured and transported to a hospital for treatment and released. The damage included smashed out window in an Apple store where some merchandise was stolen, and graffiti was painted on windows. Looters also targeted an Adidas store, pharmacy, marijuana dispensary, and other locations. Because nothing says I support illegal immigrants like, hey, I got me a new iPhone and some new shoes. Video showed a damaged jewelry store with merchandise cleared from the shelves. LAPD officer Chris Miller told City News Service one woman was arrested at the scene of the Apple Store burglary. At least 2 other people were being taken into custody by police for looting. At a Tuesday news conference, Mayor Karen Bass said the violence won't be tolerated and spoke about where most of the crimes were occurring. Again, and I mean, for me, it's interesting that I used the Sublime song to open up the show. But when I look at stuff like this, I look at the fact that, okay, people, especially in left-wing corners like Karen Bass, grew up hailing what was described in the iconic song April 29th, 1992 as heroic, or standing up against the man and everything else, and now are on the opposite end of this, saying this will not be tolerated. There is a full irony in that in and of itself. I do not believe that individuals that commit vandalism and violence in our city really are in support of immigrants, Bass said. Oh, you don't say. They have another agenda. If you support immigrants and the rights of immigrants to be in our city, you would not be tearing the city apart and vandalizing it. Which, again, is a stark contrast from even the narrative that we heard in 2020 from people like Karen Bass, like Kamala Harris, like Tim Walz. Alright, another one from KTLA 5. Overnight looting follows 4th day of anti-ICE protests. Bass blames raids. So in one breath, she blames the people who are looting, and then the next breath, apparently that wasn't politically expedient enough, so now she's blaming the ICE raids for this. And yes, Quest Fanning says these people need to be called out as distinct from protesters, whether or not they also protested as opportunists. Several high-end businesses were among the many looted and vandalized overnight following a 4th day of protests over immigration raids in downtown. KTLA's Carlos Herrera was outside the Apple Tower Theater on West 8th and Broadway as cleanup was underway following the overnight break-in and looting of the Apple Store. No ice was spray painted on the damaged glass and windows in front of the store. Inside, broken glass was seen on the ground next to several items. Looters reportedly stole multiple iPhones, Apple Watches, laptops, and chargers. Boy, it's probably a shame that those all have GPS tracking on them. Dude, a cell phone is the stupidest thing you could steal. And an Apple laptop is right up there. I believe the Apple Watch also has GPS on it. Like, they're gonna know where these things are. Multiple jewelry stores were also hit overnight. That's a little bit more understandable. A large mob was seen outside the business on 6th Street and Broadway. Display boxes were left on the sidewalk, although it remains unclear exactly what was taken from the stores. One shop owner said he witnessed at least 4 attempted lootings in LA Jewelry District. Meanwhile, a few blocks away, on West 8th and Main, police were seen taking down a suspect believed to be involved in the looting of Shoe Palace. Again, another item that doesn't have a GPS in it. In stark contrast, like I said, to a cell phone. Several other suspects managed to run from the scene. LA Mayor Karen Bass is blaming the unrest on the Trump admin's ramping up of ICE raids last week. I will just take you back to last Thursday. Last Thursday, there was nothing happening in this town. Doubtful. That called for the raids that took place on Friday. Nothing was happening. Nothing warranted the raids, Bass said. The mayor is also asking why the targets of the immigration raids have apparently changed. You remember at the beginning of this admin, we were told the raids would be to look for violent criminals, people who had warrants. Okay, see the article I just talked about a little bit ago. But I don't know how you go from drug dealer to Home Depot to people's workplaces. They're just trying to make a living. Quest says, it's funny that I now realize those freeway sounds I'd earlier thought was the sound of a water lapping on the beach. No, I don't live that close to the water, and it's not freeway sounds, unfortunately. They'd be going a lot faster if they were freeway sounds. No, this window faces a pretty major highway in the area. So, unfortunately. It would be nice to have the windows open because it's really, really nice out there. It says, I protest ICE by stealing ice. And I believe he's using the street term for ice. Just briefly, from Fox News, LA business owners are sick and tired of stupid anti-ICE riders looting their stores. You gotta be used to it at this point. I will say that this will probably lead to another mass exodus of areas of LA. Now, they're not going to leave LA, but they're not going to be sitting around downtown or Compton or Reseda or things like that. They'll leave that to Cricket Wireless. Does Cricket Wireless even still exist? I know it was a big thing down south. We have some investigation, starting with Newsweek here. LA Sheriff investigating if outside organization is behind ICE riots. From Amanda Castro and Hannah Perry. LA County Sheriff Robert Luna said on Wednesday he's investigating whether outside agitators or an organized group is behind the LA riots. Luna said authorities were looking to see if there's a conspiracy of some kind of organization responsible for the... There's a word missing from that sentence. There's some evidence that we've seen that I don't want to share at this time, Luna added Wednesday news conference. Yeah, of course it is. The sheriff declined to share more information as he said law enforcement is attempting to arrest those individuals. And the fact that that's going to go nowhere in the news cycle. The New York Post. Congress demands investigation into China-based billionaire Neville Roy Singham, who's funding radical groups, including one linked to the LA riots. Goats and Scarves joining us saying, it's weird seeing them so against ICE all of a sudden. They've been whining about global warming for years. What gives? I need a rim shot sounder for my Stream Deck. One day I've actually got to sit down and set this thing up. I only have 3 buttons set up on it so far to kind of change what my screen does. But yes, I need to put sounders in this so that when Goats and Scarves gives us gold like that, we can get the rim shot. From Isabel Vincent. A shadowy U.S. billionaire who's bankrolling radicals, including groups involved in this week's riots in LA faces being hauled before a congressional committee, where he's going to plead the fifth, according to a Republican lawmaker. China-based Neville Roy Singham will be called to testify about the funding of myriad nonprofits, including radical anti-Israel and Marxist groups. A Chinese national is funding Marxist groups? What? They include the Party for Liberation and Socialism, which has been heavily involved in protests against ICE, although there's no evidence they have been directly involved in any of the violence which has erupted there. If he refuses to appear, he'll be subpoenaed, and if he ignores that, he'll be referred to the DOJ for prosecution, said Anna Paulina Luna in a post on X in all capitals earlier this week. In April, the Senate Committee on the Judiciary urged the DOJ to investigate the People's Forum and Code Pink, leftist activist groups affiliated with Singham and his wife Jody Evans. So, this will go absolutely nowhere, of course. You don't get to be a billionaire by being stupid. We heard that earlier on the Daily Wire article. We can skip that one. An accusation here from Mark, unverified on X, MJ All Day 12, with 2 Y's. Insurrection Act is coming. It's how he'll get the military on the streets without governor's approval. There's a reason he's doing this in California, New York, and not Texas and Florida. And those tanks rolling into DC for his birthday party, they ain't leaving. We warned you. Well, again, the tanks rolling are for the military birthday, not his birthday and Flag Day. And yes, there's a reason that he's saying the Insurrection Act is coming, is because this whole act is an attempt to goad the specific Insurrection Act. Pair from the Daily Wire. Organized mob anti-ICE protesters are sharing law enforcement movement via two-way radio, from Virginia Kruta. I actually support this no matter what. This is public information. This is a non-story. They're trying to paint this, the people of the Daily Wire are trying to paint this as this is some organized RICO, ICE, anti-ICE, whatever the hell, criminal, mafia, no. That's public information. So, that's why I'm not going to go far into this. I'm just going to leave this one as it is. You can get the scanner. You don't need a two-way radio. Of course they're using communication tactics. And they're not using cell phones that can get cut off. Why wouldn't they? What a stupid question. Bubble-headed bleach blonde clobbers reporter asking if president supports peaceful protests. I don't know if he does or not, but he probably does. But these are not peaceful protests. White House Press Secretary Bubble-headed bleach blonde concisely dismissed a reporter on Wednesday when she was asked if the president supports the right to peaceful protest. Let's listen.
Thanks so much, Caroline. The president warned that any protests on Saturday would be met with force. Can you clarify what kind of protest President Trump does support or find acceptable?
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers who are simply trying to do their job. It's very clear for the president what he supports and what he does not. Unfortunately for Democrats, that line has not been made clear, and they've allowed this unrest and this violence to continue, and the president has had to step in.
So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question. Raquel.
Thank you so much, Caroline.
And again, he probably does, but if you want to see if he supports a peaceful protest, then give us a peaceful protests. John Fetterman getting back in the news and angering even more left-wingers, especially the far, far left ones. John Fetterman, I unapologetically stand for free speech, peaceful demonstrations, and immigration, but that is not this. This is anarchy and true chaos. It's not anarchy, by the way. It's centralized. It's not anarchy. My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement. But again, you have the captive media that's just going to say that this is a fiery but mostly peaceful protest. I appreciate where you're coming from, Fetterman, but it's not going to go anywhere. Another opinion on this particular one, how Mexican flags are a gift to Trump. From Dan Gooding over at Newsweek. Now, this is an opinion piece, I believe. No, it's not an opinion piece. The headline reads like it's an opinion piece. As violence erupted out of an immigration enforcement protest in LA over the weekend, images of protesters waving Mexican flags became a focal point of the coverage and for the Trump admin's reactions. The riots in LA prove that we desperately need more immigration enforcement, personnel, and resources. White House Press Secretary, bubble-headed bleach blonde, posted on X, formerly Twitter, Monday morning, alongside a photo of a protester waving a Mexican flag. America must reverse the invasion unleashed by Biden of millions of unvetted illegal aliens into our country. Various iterations of a Mexican flag, at times combined with the U.S. flag, were carried by protesters as some streets in LA turned violent. Protesters were angry at federal agents raiding immigrant communities amid efforts to ramp up daily arrests by customs. As photos of the flags appeared online, flown amid burning vehicles and law enforcement in riot gear, senior officials within the Trump admin said this proved that there had been an invasion by illegal immigrants, particularly over the last 4 years under former President Biden, and that it was necessary to send the National Guard and deport those in the country without legal status. These idiots waving Mexican flags during the LA riots just gave Donald Trump the greatest political gift. Matt Wiley, who founded the Freedom Project USA, told Newsweek, "It'll be Exhibit A as proof of the invasion." Those images, done more for the last few days to strengthen the ability to crack down on illegal immigration than weeks of messaging ever could. The Trump admin has been trying to ramp up the number of illegal immigrant arrests in recent weeks after a slower than anticipated increase in arrests and removals and multiple lawsuits challenging suspects of the president's policies, including the use of Alien Enemies Act to speed up deportations of alleged gang members. I do agree with this particular author in this one here. Now, the creases, you've also got to keep in mind that people are going out and buying these just to wave them. And a lot of these people probably didn't have the Mexican flag at home other than this before this. You always look for the creases on this one. It's the same thing when we see the white supremacy flag and the Nazi flag that are fully creased because they came out of the package right before Patriot Front started marching. By the way, I noticed we haven't heard a whole lot from those, excuse my language, jerk-offs since Kash Patel took over the FBI, have we? It's kind of weird. Let's see. Another one from Newsweek. We've got the curfew news. We talked a bit about this earlier. LA riots day 5. Mayor Bass enacts new downtown curfew. From Anna Commander and Holly Silverman. That is a cool name. Anna Commander. It just rolls off the tongue. That's actually kind of awesome, I'm not going to lie. The LAPD has begun arresting people Tuesday as the unrest from protests and riots entered its 5th day in the City of Angels. Amid the ongoing tumult, Mayor Bass implemented a curfew for portions of downtown from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. And it could continue throughout the coming days if warranted. It's going to put a real damper on the No Kings protests, by the way. I'd be interested to see if those turn into riots as well. Newsweek reached out to Gavin Newsom's office via email for updated comment. Since his January 20th inauguration, Trump has implemented sweeping change mainly through executive orders and has prioritized immigration control as a key pillar within the administration. The LA police and city officials warned that people who break the curfew are not exempt, like first responders, credentialed media, and those who live in the affected areas, will be subject to arrest. During a news conference, the officials displayed a map of the curfew zone, urging all residents to abide by the new regulation. The zone is composed of the city quadrant, where the 110, I-10, and I-5 overlap, to include the fashion and arts district known Skid Row and Chinatown. During a formal address on Tuesday, Newsom denounced the Trump and his admin for inflaming an already combustible situation. Newsom also denounced any violence or harm to law enforcement, saying there will be arrests and consequences if people behave lawlessly. Hundreds of people have taken to the streets since Friday after raids by U.S. Customs Enforcement swept through the city earlier in the day. So, they're trying to do something about this. It's probably not working very well. I'd be interested to see how many people get arrested after this. The Rodney King riots officer says the LA mayor acted too late as anti-ICE violence engulfs the city. From Peter Dabroska, Adam Sabes, and Ashley Papa. Former LA Police Department detective who was on the force during the Rodney King riots said that Mayor Bass was too late in his calling for law and order to be restored as riots broke out in the city this week. President Trump deployed the National Guard to LA as anti-ICE violence escalated over the weekend, prompting pushback from Gavin Newsom. LAPD Chief Jim McDonnell said Tuesday his department made 197 arrests, with 130 of those occurring near Commercial and Alameda, while the other 67 occurring after protesters occupied the 101. The LAPD said it arrested 96 people overnight Monday during the protest in downtown. Charges included assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer, failure to disperse, and looting and arson. One person was arrested for attempted murder with a Molotov. Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Moses Castillo, a former LAPD detective, told Fox News Digital that Bass was too late in calling for order to be restored. She's now trying to play catch-up, Castillo said. I think if she would have been more forceful in the beginning, that we're not going to tolerate these crimes and allow police officers to do their jobs and arrest people on site, I think it would have been different. Instead, she's now saying that that these crimes would not be tolerated, looting would not be tolerated, but it's too little too late. I tend to agree with this guy, not even specifically over the fact that, I'm very against property rights, I'm for property rights. I'm very against property crimes against other people, because what's yours is yours and you should be able to protect it. But what I mean when I say this is, if she'd been forceful in this and stopping this and pushing this down and taking the gloves off the LAPD to do their jobs, the National Guard wouldn't be there right now. The National Guard would not be involved in any of this. So yes, just on that factor, too late. AOC downplays LA riots as mere teens throwing rocks. Pins the blame on Trump. Surprise, surprise, from Michael Dorgan. The Honorable and Venerable Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch, downplayed the recent riots in LA, attributing the chaos to unruly teens, not violent anarchists, and blaming President Trump's immigration crackdown for the unrest. Yeah, it should have been. Occasional Cortex took to social media platform Blue Sky on Tuesday and said Democrats don't need to answer for everything who throws a rock, puppy, and said the party was falling into a Republican trap by trying to explain why parts of the sanctuary city had gone up in flames. She instead blamed President Trump for the chaotic scenes that had resulted in property being burned and rocks and Molotov cocktails thrown at law enforcement as some agitators waved Mexican flags. It's like a domestic violence survivor. The people in LA are like the domestic violence perpetrators, rather, not the survivor. If you just act right, you wouldn't make me have to hit you. What a joke. We have the January 6th comparisons with Hegseth and Johnson both weighing in, both from Newsweek. Pete Hegseth reacts to double standard between January 6th and LA riots. Jeez. Goats and Scarf says, I think the LA store should take a page out of Kevin McAllister's book. And Quest Fanning says, it's California, so we'd call it Homo Loan. Boo! In a tense exchange with Chris Murphy, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth responded to questions regarding concerns over the perceived double standard of his support for deploying the National Guard for the widespread demonstrations against ICE in LA compared to January 6th, the selfie fest at the Capitol. The senator from Connecticut asked Hegseth during a Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, do you believe it was the right decision to deploy the National Guard on January 6, 2021? Hegseth replied, all I know is the right decision to deploy the National Guard to defend ICE agents in defense of the executive execution of their jobs. Hegseth went on to say, in response to Murphy's insistence that the double standard, I support the decision that President Trump made to deploy the National Guard in advance of January 6th. That was denied. Wednesday's hearing marked Hegseth's second consecutive day of scrutiny from lawmakers who questioned him over the deployment of Marines in LA. Objections from California Governor Gavin Newsom, continued military aid to Ukraine, and proposed deal involving a gifted Qatari jet. Hegseth defended the decision to send troops to LA to support federal immigration raids, telling senators on Wednesday it was about maintaining law and order. The mission to LA, as you know, was not about lethality, Hegseth said. It's about maintaining law and order on behalf of law enforcement agents who deserve to do their job without being attacked by mobs of people. Jack Reed of Rhode Island called the move illegal, warning it could undermine military readiness. Lawmakers pressed Hegseth on how the deployment, more than 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines, is being funded, and whether it diverts resources from essential training. I don't think it does, and I mean, the comparison to January 6th is completely dishonest because, well, first off, that was over in about 7 hours. I don't think it was even that many. That was over in like 4 hours. This has been 5 days. And yes, as Hegseth pointed out, the National Guard was requested for January the 6th. And it was denied. In fact, as I mentioned before, I told people on numerous occasions, don't go on January 6th. Don't go there. It's a trap. I was to the understanding the National Guard was going to be activated and you would be shot on sight. I am pleasantly surprised that that is not what happened. Mike Johnson also says there's a clear distinction between January 6th and LA riots. From Sonam Sheth, House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Tuesday there's a clear distinction between the January 6th, 2021 siege on the U.S. Capitol, selfie fest at the U.S. Capitol, you mean, and the widespread demonstrations against immigration and customs enforcement in LA. Alright, we know the context. CNN's Manu Raju asked Johnson whether he thinks it's hypocritical for Trump to condemn the anti-ICE protesters in LA for clashing with law enforcement when Trump pardoned or commuted the sentences of everyone charged in the deadly Capitol selfie fest, many of whom were convicted of beating or impeding law enforcement. Look, no, I think there's a clear distinction between the two, Johnson said. We've seen what's happened in LA in the early 90s and other times when these things got out of control. You have to stay on top of that, and you cannot afford to let it get out of control. But what's the difference between the violent protesters on January 6th and anti-ICE demonstrators? Raju pressed the House Speaker. Everyone wants me to litigate January 6th. I'm not going to do that, Johnson said. There's a very clear distinction between the two people who broke the law and destroyed property on January 6th were met with the proper consequences on that. He added that the government has been consistent with the issue in LA before turning to walk away. And again, when these people were told to disperse on January 6th, they were. And one of the big problems with January 6th and the gigantic hard-on that the Biden administration got for the rioters at January 6th is if the arrests, because a very small portion of the people at January 6th were actually committing violence. There were thousands of people. There had to be at least 500 people just inside of the rotunda alone when Stephen Ignoramus was streaming it, standing around looking confused. So by comparison, by ratio, a very small amount of the people got into the Capitol, were running around, or being led around by police officers, and were committing the violence that we saw within that. And if the arrests had been limited to those people, I think that would have gone completely differently. And I don't know that there would have even been a series of pardons for anybody from January the 6th. But when you go back and scoop up Granny, who was a tourist to the Capitol at the time, because her phone pinged inside of the Capitol, or as I mentioned earlier, the journalist who's standing there with a cell phone streaming to YouTube in one hand and one streaming to Instagram in the other, walking around like this, not doing anything, not hurting anybody, and you sweep that guy up in the arrest, and you ruin his life over it too. Guy lost his job, he lost his apartment, he lost everything over this. Got his computer taken away, life's work of music taken away from him. If those people had not been arrested, I don't think that there would have been a series of pardons for any of this. I think it would have been done and the people would have served the time, probably for vandalism and trespass. I don't think that it would have been inciting an insurrection or a riot. But they would have done their vandalism time and they would have gone home and it would have all been over. And an interesting one off this, Lucky McGee over on X says, I'm old enough to remember that Tim Walz sending the National Guard to shoot non-lethal rounds at folks for daring to be outside on their own front porch 5 years ago, and Democrats not saying a single word about that. Let's bring some volume to this.
No, there's more. Look at this. They just keep coming.
Oh, go inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get inside! Get in your house now! Let's go! Light him up! Go inside now! Get in the house!
Get in, get in, get in, get in, get in, get in! Get in!
Oh, God, that hurt. You good?
Are you okay?
Right on the fucking crotch.
Are you okay? You got hit?
I'm good. They're fucked for that, dude. What?
No, there's more. Look at this.
Yeah, that was probably not right. But as I constantly say on X, that's different. But circle the D when you say that that's different. We're actually making pretty good time for the number of tabs that I had here. All right, 2 days from now. And some of these have actually already started at this point. On Saturday, June 14th, the left is planning mass protests all across the U.S., which, by the way, there are 2 in the major cities that are close to where I live now. The undisclosed small town that I'm not going to tell you where it is. They're not happening in my small town. Probably for very good reason. The No Kings organization is the organizer. It would be nice to find out who funds them, have their funds frozen. I will put the link in the first comment so you can see where in your area to avoid. Just type in your zip code and the map will show you all the locations near you. I was surprised Seattle wasn't on the list, but a small city where I work is. I'm actually surprised Seattle's not on the list either. Be safe, as I expect there could be mass chaos, especially near coastal regions. Which the link is in the first comment, as promised. So, in America, we don't do kings, except unless it's Obama. Then we want that king. They've defied our courts, deported Americans, disappeared people off the streets, attacked our civil rights, and slashed our services. The corruption has gone too far. No thrones, no crowns, no kings. Now, in most places, by the way, this is going to... Let's see if we can find... There's a special note for DC too, by the way. So this is all the way zoomed out at this point, but I mean, as you can see, they're planned all over the place. They're even planned down in Mexico for reasons that I can't quite understand. It looks like they're actually planned in Canada as well. So, a bunch down in Chicago. That seems to be where one of the headquarters is. But, I mean, as you can see, there are 3 or 4 in the Madison area. They're going to do one in Stoughton. Are you stupid? I've been to Stoughton. They're not going to do one in Stoughton. It's not going to be stood for. There's one in Kenosha, one in Racine, obviously. A couple in Milwaukee. There's one in La Crosse, down by where I used to live. Let's click this out a little bit. Detroit, obviously. Toronto, they're having one. I don't know why. I don't know what they're protesting. Huh. Look at all those in Boston area. Like, that's going to be everywhere. In New York, that's New Jersey. We don't want to do New Jersey. And Long Island in New York. New York City. Look at them all over there. Is this New York City? I guess I don't know the area well enough. Of course, there's only a handful in Delaware. Rehoboth Beach. They're going to do one in Rehoboth Beach. Are you shocked? I'm shocked. Yonkers, Newark. So yeah, if you're in the New York area, you're going to get it from all sides. Let's go down. DC, they're actually not doing one. There's a special statement on that. But they're doing them all around DC. Atlanta area, looks like there's a bunch around the area. Maybe even a few close to people that I know. Are they doing one in Rome? They're not doing one in Rome, I bet. Marjorie Taylor Greene will be safe. They're in Florida around the Orlando area. Not so much in South Florida. Oh, I guess there are a couple down there in South Florida. Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio. Just got a text message from somebody here I gotta check on. Look, they're all over LA, so one of the things that I will point out to this, the one that's closest to me, I do not expect to grow to more than 30 or 40 people. I think it's going to be, I think 15 is going to be it. But if you are close to one of these, do not engage. And honestly, quite frankly, don't go anywhere close to it. Goats and Scarves actually pointed out, just hack their GPS and send them all to Mexico. Easy. If some of this goes into violent territory, then you're going to be sitting in a situation where, yes, they're going to use cell phone data to determine who was there and who wasn't there. So, yeah, I can probably do that. Quest Fanning wants a link for one that I closed, so I'm going to go over to my other window here. I'll put it through X. But let me... What am I doing here? That's not it. I'm going to do this. We're going to go history. I said history. This one. Let's go over to this window. No, I don't want to send that to the chat group. I want to send that directly to... Alright, there it is. Let's get the Instagram back up. Probably was dark for a little while. Ask and you shall receive. I would have waited till after the show on that one, but that'll be buried way too far in the history otherwise. And I wouldn't have been able to find it again at quick access. On-air production. I'm the best at it, I swear. Oh, I just sent him a message and I was going to go get naked. He's going to go wash the glorious beard. But anyway, yeah. If you're in the region of one of these things, don't go. Don't go, don't try to engage. I would say don't even go back and try to film and try to say, hey, this is what the morons are doing. I think most of these are going to be tiny, 10 to 15 people, maybe 30 people max. When you get towards the bigger metros, they're going to start to get bigger. But also, at any point, there's going to be agitators. Some of them are going to come from the government. And yes, there's going to be the potential for all of them to turn violent. With, again, the thought to go with the Insurrection Act. So then we can say, oh, hey, Hitlerian, turning the military on its own people. Now, there's a special statement on the one in D.C. A note on Washington, D.C. On June 14th, Flag Day, Trump wants tanks in the street and a made-for-TV display of dominance for his birthday. No, it's for Flag Day, again. A spectacle meant to look like strength, but real power isn't staged in Washington. It rises up everywhere else. Instead of allowing his birthday parade to be the center of gravity, we will make action everywhere else the story of America that day, people coming together, communities across the country to reject strongman politics and corruption. For that reason, No Kings is not hosting an event in Washington, D.C. We will instead have a major flagship march and rally in Philly to draw a clear contrast between our people-powered movement and the costly ways. It's not people-powered, by the way. The heiress of Walmart's already been caught funding this, so... And the costly, wasteful, and un-American birthday parade in Washington. You can RSVP for the Philadelphia event here. For participants in the DC area, we urge you to join us in Philly. Find a local No Kings mobilization in Virginia or Maryland, or join our partners at a free DC for DC Joy Day, a community-led event in the district. So, I got this feeling that something is gonna... I think something's gonna go off in DC. I do. Alright. Newsweek has a map and list following this. which we've already kind of gone over that, so I'm going to skip this one. From Forbes. Billionaire Walmart heiress promotes nationwide anti-Trump protests. 76-year-old Christy Walton has aligned herself with No Kings, an organization planning mass protests across the country this Saturday. How? Like, is she still an heiress because of the fact that the dad is still alive? Like, when I'm hearing heiress, I'm thinking like 20, 30 something running around spending daddy's money. This is from Jemima McAvoy. Walmart heiress Christy Walton, one of the richest women in America, has joined a small group of billionaires speaking out against President Trump. There's a lot more than you think there are, Forbes. The 76-year-old Walton was an estimated $19.3 billion, according to Forbes, paid to take a full-page ad in the New York Times on Sunday, calling the readers to mobilize on Saturday, June 14th. The ad appears to be an escalation of the one she paid for in March, also in the Times print edition. The top of the ad are the words "No Kings," which appear to reference a political organization that's coordinating hundreds of anti-Trump protests across the U.S. this Saturday, June 14th, the same day Trump is slated to host a military parade in D.C. Organizers of the counter-protest told Axios they're expecting to be the largest single-day rally since the start of the admin. No Kings spokesperson Andrew Cook told Forbes there will be more than 1,800 events across the country. The group is not planning a protest in D.C. as part of their plan to make action everywhere else. Excuse me. So, yes, Walmart is funny. Another reason for me not to go there. I try not to pay money to places that wear their politics on their sleeve. I make exceptions for Hobby Lobby and for Chick-fil-A because they did not outright say what their politics were, even though everybody in the world knows what they are. But people actually had to go digging to see where they donated their money. Whereas people like Christy Walton just wear it out on their sleeves. Capitol Police prepare for the No Kings Day protest. This is from WAPT. The national protest, No Kings Day, is approaching and is making its way to cities across Mississippi. In Jackson, organizers are expecting over 400 people to attend, and Capitol Police is gearing up. Capitol Police Chief Bo Luckey said that they will have more than enough support and will block off the streets around the Capitol. He said they've worked with these organizers for several different protests and haven't had any trouble. Yeah, I don't anticipate there being a lot of trouble in Mississippi because the good old boys will make sure that there isn't. Luckey said they're there to observe and monitor the protests and make sure everything runs smoothly. Again, I'm really thinking in deep red Mississippi, this is going to be like a 14-person protest. Trump saying, on the other hand, protests in D.C. will be met with very heavy force, even though they're not planning to have one in D.C. From Irie Sentner, President Trump warned that any protests during the weekend's major military parade in D.C. will be met with very heavy force. If there's any protester who wants to come out, they'll be met with very big force. The President said that Tuesday during an impromptu Oval Office press conference, "I haven't even heard about a protest, but there are people that hate our country." And that might be part of the reason that they're not doing one in D.C., but I think a part of it is I think that they're not advertised. I still think there's going to be one. But I also think it'd be kind of stupid to go back and do one while all the military stuff is right there. Chicago bracing for this, for the No Kings protest. Chicago leaders urging calm as the city heads into a weekend of No Kings protests against President Trump's policies and military parade. Saturday's protests are expected to be exponentially bigger than Tuesday's demonstrations, which resulted in some vandalism and clashes with police. No Kings, including the national progressive group Indivisible, have a stronger infrastructure and organizing track record than those who put together Tuesday's march in response to immigration actions in LA. So, Brandon Johnson says his recent ICE escalation is meant to incite a reaction, but he believes Chicagoans proved last summer they can hold large, peaceful, organized protests. I don't know. That's one where I'm thinking that something's going to bust out. And we'll see what happens. Colorado torn organizers to cancel No Kings anti-Trump rally, citing an event conflict. No, I think that they just didn't want to deal with it. This Saturday, June 14th, hundreds of No Kings rallies are expected to take place across the country, including Colorado, protesting authoritarianism and coinciding with Trump's birthday, the U.S. Army's 250th birthday, and Flag Day. But in Douglas County, one woman says the town of Parker stopped her from organizing the event because it coincided with Parker Day's festival a half-mile away. Town officials cite safety as the reason the rally can't occur at this time because it has the largest festival, but organizers say it violates their free speech rights. That's going to be one to watch, by the way. The evil, terrifying king, Williamson said. Signs inside Carolyn Williamson's Parker home made it clear how she feels about the Trump admin. The evil, terrifying king, Williams said, while gesturing to a papier-mâché Trump head she made, before moving to a pile of homemade signs. I try to make more than one of each kind of theme. He claims he loves the Constitution, but he only picks and chooses the things he likes, Williamson said, citing concerns over recent immigration policy under Trump's leadership. When she heard of the plans for No Kings rallies across the country on Trump's birthday, she decided to organize one in her community. We need one in Parker, Williamson said. We have to use our white privilege and speak up for those who can't while we can. Soon, the nearly 400 people had signed up to attend, and Williamson began planning for their safety. That would be an interesting one to watch. Because I feel like it's still going to happen. Whether the city likes it or not. Alright, where did this all begin, by the way? We intended to get this far yesterday. There was a scheduling conflict, and I could not finish the news cycle that we had, but I did save some things over from last week. Starting with this one from KARE 11 News out of the Twin Cities. 2 Twin Cities restaurants targeted by federal law enforcement. This was the first big raid, and this was the first major protest. From Dana Theed and Samantha Fisher. Federal law enforcement teams descended on 2 Twin Cities restaurants Tuesday, reportedly to serve search warrants related to drugs and money laundering. Vested officers raided Taqueria y Birreria in Las Cuatro Milpas locations in Minneapolis and Bloomington late morning. KARE 11 crew reported that some of those carrying out the raid in Bloomington were members of the FBI evidence team. An FBI spokesperson shared a brief statement earlier Tuesday saying the FBI is conducting court-authorized law enforcement activity today. I do not have any additional information to share with you at this time. Later on Tuesday, a spokesperson for ICE called the event a groundbreaking criminal operation and said it was the first in Minnesota under the Homeland Security Task Force umbrella, marking a new chapter in how we confront complex multidimensional threats. From drug smuggling to criminal labor trafficking, this operation showcases the breadth of our collective mission and the strength of a united front, said ICE Homeland Security Investigations St. Paul Special Agent in charge Jamie Holt. Together, we're safeguarding communities, protecting national security, and setting a new standard of joint enforcement efforts. Holt said that ICE was assisted by state and local law enforcement, as well as federal partners, including U.S. attorneys, FBI, IRS, DEA, ERO, ATF, USMS, DSS, Border Patrol, and Coast Guard, and the TSA. So, TLDR, because this is over a week old at this point, I don't want to go too deep into this one, is last week, on Tuesday, there were several raids of restaurants around the Twin Cities area that were set to go back and spark protest as well. And then LA happened 3 days later, and everybody completely forgot about this. Minneapolis police chief calls federal law enforcement's actions tone deaf after chaotic raid. Minneapolis leaders have addressed concerns following Tuesday's chaotic clash between protesters, police deputies, and federal law enforcement in the same neighborhood that was the epicenter of unrest following George Floyd's murder in 2020. It happened just before noon outside Los Cuatros Mil Plus restaurant off East Lake and Bloomington. DHS says it was executing multiple search warrants and didn't make an arrest, calling the operation groundbreaking. But the crowds quickly gathered at the scene, many believing it was an immigration raid. City leaders soon released statements about the operation's actual purpose. The incident was related to a criminal search warrant for drugs and money laundering and was related to an immigration enforcement. And was not related to immigration enforcement. Jacob Fry said on Tuesday, during a joint press conference about their Operation Safe Summer plan, Fry and Brian O'Hara said they didn't know about the federal operation until it was already underway. Both are also not happy about the optics of this enforcement effort in the heart of the Latino immigrant community. So, and I mean, at this point, people are already looking for any excuse that they can to go back and riot over something like this. And then they wound up getting one, and there's going to be one in town no matter what anyway over the LA stuff. A crowd is formed, but we're not going to spend much time on that one. Let's talk about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. From the Daily Wire, Kilmar Abrego Garcia to be returned to the U.S. to face charges. From Spencer Lindquist. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Salvadorian illegal immigrant deported to El Salvador's prison for terrorists, is being brought back to the U.S. to face new charges, a recent report says. Abrego Garcia, who is incorrectly dubbed a Maryland man by Democrat politicians and members of the media, is on his way back to the U.S. to face federal charges pertaining to his role in an illegal alien smuggling ring, a report from ABC News claims. The Salvadorian national, who is believed to be a member of MS-13 and stands accused of beating his wife, is believed to have smuggled thousands of illegal aliens, including children, from the southern border into the interior of the country over the course of nearly a decade. Some of those smuggled into the U.S. are believed to be members of MS-13. Abrego Garcia now faces a 2-count indictment in a federal court in Tennessee for his alleged role in the illegal alien smuggling operation. Anonymous sources told the court. So, again, just like I say when it's a left-wing outlet that does it, something that we can't possibly trust. So, he is back. DOJ investigating the 2022 Abrego traffic stop, per ABC. From James Hill, Catherine Falters, Alexander Malin, and Luke Barr. The DOJ has been quietly investigating a Tennessee traffic stop in 22 involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadorian man at the center of a high-profile court battle over his mistaken deportation from Maryland to El Salvador by the Trump admin, ABC News has learned. Federal investigators are involved in the inquiry recently spoke with a convicted felon in an Alabama prison and questioned him about potential connections to Garcia, according to sources familiar with the investigation, anonymous again, of course. The inmate, Jose Ramon Hernandez Reyes, 38, was stopped, the registered owner of a vehicle driven by Abrego Garcia, when he was stopped by the Tennessee Highway Patrol in late 22. According to the sources, Abrego Garcia was pulled over for speeding in a vehicle with 8 passengers and told police they'd been working construction in Missouri. Federal agents investigating the Tennessee incident appeared late last month at the Federal Correctional Institute in Talladega, Alabama, to question Hernandez Reyes, who had an attorney present and was granted limited immunity. Sources familiar with the interview said Reyes told investigators that he previously operated a taxi service based in Baltimore. He claimed to have met Garcia around 15 and claimed to have hired him on multiple occasions to transport undocumented migrants from Texas to various locations in the U.S. The sources told ABC News the frequency and time frame of the alleged trips was not immediately clear. So that might be why he's being extradited, because they got him on something else that they can go back and deport him over. So we'll follow that and see what happens. I noticed there wasn't a lot of that in X coverage because a lot of that was swallowed up by the LA riots. Abrego Garcia's lawyers asked him, judge to release him from custody pending trial. I'm going to say, how about no on that one? From Josh Gerstein and Kyle Cheney. Lawyers for Garcia, the Salvadorian man illegally deported to his native country in March and returned to the U.S. last week, could face human trafficking charges, say the Trump admin is compounding his mistreatment by trying to keep him in jail while awaiting trial. Well, yeah, but he's also very much a flight risk, and he has connections with people who can, smuggle him. Mr. Garcia asked the court for what he's been denied the past several months: due process. His lawyers, 4 appointed public defenders, argued in a 20-page filing to a federal magistrate judge in Nashville, Tennessee, where Abrego Garcia was secretly indicted last month ahead of his return. Magistrate Judge Shara Holmes set a hearing Friday for whether Abrego Garcia should be detained as he awaits trial. However, even if she opts against detention in the criminal case, Abrego Garcia will likely be put in immigration custody, and his prospects for release there are uncertain. I would not release him if it was me. Again, this guy knows human traffickers. He knows how to get around this kind of stuff. He's a flight risk. Proof is in the pudding, Trump DOJ tells court it will seek dismissal of Abrego Garcia case. From Brianne Depish and Ashley Oliver. The Trump admin on Tuesday said it plans to seek the dismissal of a civil case ordering the government to return Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia to the U.S., arguing in a new court filing the case is now moot, given that he's now back in U.S. custody. So, clear the rolls, it's over. David Hogg news, as we move now into our third hour. David Hogg won't run for the DNC post again after party orders redo of vice chair elections. From Ben Commissar. Progressive activist David Hogg said he won't seek to continue as vice chair of the DNC after the DNC called for a redo of the February election that elevated him to the post. And I think a part of that's going to be because he doesn't like the rules. He doesn't like the fact that he can't go back and promote his candidates over the chosen corporate ones that the DNC has chosen. Shortly after the DNC announced it would hold new elections Thursday for two vice chair positions held by Hogg and Pennsylvania State Rep. Malcolm Kenyatta as a result of a procedural challenge, Hogg announced he wouldn't be a candidate. Okay, that is what that is. Sorry, I had to check on that one. The decision comes amid a public spat with the DNC and chairman Ken Martin over Hogg's decision to support some primary challenges to Democratic incumbents. A spat that loomed over the vote, even though it wasn't directly related to the challenge that ultimately led the party to call for a new election. Hogg made the announcement in a lengthy statement that criticized the Democratic Party for lack of vision and refusal to pass the torch to the next generation. But his discussion about the DNC and the vice chairmanship specifically was more muted. So, he is gone, of course. And he's not going to run, partially for his own self-interest, of course. And we have commercials, so I can't go back and run the sounder. Which I need to make in the actual sounder. For David Hogg, I issue you this. You'll love to see it. Yeah, he's out. They tried to pull it as a diversity quota thing, but yeah, he got out for not backing the right horses. There is a surveillance video of the stabbing of Austin Metcalf. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I've seen the video. It's grainy. It doesn't show anything. And the investigators have anything else that's close up, but amid an ongoing investigation over the fatal stabbing of Austin Metcalf at Frisco, Texas track meet, the school district announced it has surveillance footage of the stabbing. The Frisco Independent School District confirmed to Fox News Digital it possesses surveillance footage of the April 2nd incident at Kuykendall Stadium, but will not be publicly releasing the video. It's out there. You can find it. I've seen it. It doesn't show anything. Just an attempt to put this back in the news. Undeservedly, of course. Something on the auto pen. Which I talked about this in my video yesterday as well. I might have to throw a video up for you guys and step away for just a moment. Which we can do that with a Fox News video. But here are Biden's most controversial pardons mainly signed using auto pen. So we have an announcement of the investigation first. Briefly, I do have to step away for just a moment. So let me change up my scene here. Kill that. Kill that. And let's watch the video.
Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. When you look at these last-minute Biden pardons, the big ones, Biden siblings, Fauci, January 6th committee.
That's right.
Most of the big ones have the same very neat signature. We would expect that probably to be the auto pen. There is one that looks different. It looks authentic. In fact, if you look at the last name, it almost looks like the president was having a hard time spelling his last name there. Is this White House of the opinion that the only pardon that would count is one that the president signed himself?
It's very interesting. Very interesting props. If you want to bring them to my office later so I can take a closer look, I would like to do that. The president is making a good point when he discusses the usage of the auto pen. Who was running the country for the past 4 years? Perhaps those documents were signed with the auto pen, something that this, I believe the Department of Justice is looking into. As you saw, Ed Martin made an announcement at the Department of Justice this morning to launch an investigation because the American people deserve answers.
Is there any concern that this president who won the election on a promise to fix the economy and close the border, that focusing and scrutinizing these Biden pardons is looking into the past instead of looking forward?
I think in comparison to the amount of time this president has spent on securing the border, on fixing our economy, I just read out for you an entire list of economic accomplishments. Look at the border numbers, look at the time and effort he's divulged into solving the global conflicts abroad. It pales in comparison, but it still, nevertheless, is a very important issue, and it was a huge issue that sent the president back to this White House. The Americans saw with their own eyes a mentally incompetent president, and they want answers for that, and the president believes they should have them.
And something that just crossed, Caroline, how mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Stepped away for long enough to notice the fact that they moved on to go talking about the pork-filled bill. Anyway, yes, we're back. I guess I now understand why the AM radio guys that I rail against so hard have such long commercial breaks because it gives you a chance to go back and pee when you got to. Anyway, going on to the auto pen thing. The DOJ is reviewing the list of people who were granted pardons by former President Biden amid new concerns about his use of auto pen to automatically sign documents and concerns about his state of mind and mental acuity in his final months in office. Biden used his final weeks as Commander-in-Chief to grant clemency and pardons to more than 1,500 individuals in what his White House described as the largest single-day act of clemency as a U.S. president. But critics blasted Biden for some of the pardons and preemptive pardons for members of his family, inner circle, and some allies, amid concerns that the Trump admin would investigate and attempt to punish their actions. Biden signed the pardon for his son Hunter by hand, but others appear to have been signed by auto pen. So here's the list of the former president's most controversial pardons. Hunter, obviously. We know that one. His family members. Brother James, Sarah Jones, Valerie Biden Owens, John T. Owens, and his brother Francis Biden. Full and unconditional preemptive pardon for his family members covered any nonviolent offenses against the U.S. that may have been committed or taken in part during the period from January 1st through January 1st, 2014 through. Mark Milley, after the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal in 2021, Dr. Fauci, members of the House Select Committee. So, and yeah, there's no real understanding as to where these people were up. But again, and they're talking about the fact that they want to investigate the use of auto pen for criminals that are in prison for drug possession and a number of other people that were in. I mean, there was a massive list of pardons that went through from Biden with the auto pen. And realistically, I'm going to go briefly into this, but I'm not going to go into the detail that I went into. I did put out a video yesterday, and I talked about this. I put that out on Thursday night. If you guys want to go watch that, kind of explaining my thoughts on pardons and revoking pardons, because that's been a big part of the political landscape for the last few years at this point, talking about revoking one person's pardons or the other person's pardons, or this or that or the next thing off of that. And I don't agree with it. I do think that for people who have been indicted, gone through the criminal system, and were imprisoned or already did their time and just getting it off their records, I don't think that it should be legal to reverse any pardons or even threaten to reverse any of the pardons. And I base that on the fact that I think that that would run afoul of the Fifth Amendment rather, and double jeopardy. I think it'd be an interesting court case, and I don't know the actual answer to it, on whether or not the people that got the preemptive pardons are going to be... I don't think double jeopardy applies to those people. And I don't know whether or not that's true or not. And I know that's even going back to... That's going back to even the ideas of what people thought that Trump was going to do for his family going on his first term. I think if somebody were to go through and rescind pardons for a preemptive pardon, then yes, you could still go and face trial for something like that based on the fact that you didn't go through the system. Double jeopardy wouldn't apply. But I would need a stronger constitutional mind than myself to actually answer that question. All right. Trump orders an investigation into increasingly apparent cover-up of Biden's mental decline and aids use of auto pen. Which I'm sure that this is probably one of those things that the LA riots right now are trying to cover up and trying to make sure that people don't see. President Trump directed his admin on Wednesday to investigate whether former President Biden's aides conspired to deceive the public about his mental decline and used an auto pen to sign documents without his knowledge. In recent months, it's become increasingly apparent that former President Biden's aides abused the power of the presidential signatures through the use of AutoPen to conceal Biden's cognitive decline and assert Article 2 authority, Trump wrote in a memo to his counsel and Attorney General Pam Bondi. I don't know that anything is actually going to come out of this. But I would like to see what the actual opinion is on AutoPen and being able to use it, and ways that it could be abused. It's another one of those things I constantly talk about with the Trump administration, where we had something that was fairly ambiguous and in a gray area, and then now we'll actually get a court hearing and decide what the actual right decision is for that. Alright, I'm going to go briefly on this one because it's 2 weeks old, but it's launched the next one, so we'll move on to Kharkiv stuff shortly after this one. Ukraine hits air bases thousands of miles inside of Russia in audacious military operation. From Svetlana Vyasova, Victoria Butenko, Tim Lister, Mitchell McCluskey, and Helen Reagan. Ukrainian forces have destroyed dozens of Russian warplanes parked at their air bases thousands of miles from the front lines, according to a source in the country's security services, in one of Kiev's most audacious and sophisticated counter-assaults since the beginning of the war. The operation, dubbed Spiderweb, saw drones hit targets across large swaths of Russia, including Belaya, which is closer to Japan than Ukraine, and at Olenia Air Force Base, near Murmansk in the Arctic Circle, according to the source. More than 40 Russian aircraft were burning en masse at 4 air bases, the source said. The SBU, Ukraine's domestic intelligence agency, said the strikes caused an estimated $7 billion in damages and hit 34% of Russia's strategic cruise missile carriers at its main air bases. The drone attacks came on the eve of expected peace talks in Istanbul, which is not Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Yes, it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. Why'd they change it? I can't say. Maybe they liked it better that way. Between Russia and Ukraine, which were already strained by uncertainty and pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump admin was not given a heads up about the operation, an admin official told CNN. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that either. So, Ukraine went deep into enemy territory to come back and strike, which, I mean, destroys the narrative entirely of the fact that this is now a strictly defensive war. Going all the way to nearly Japan to go and destroy Russian airplanes with drones inside of trucks. They just drove trucks into Russia and nobody stopped them at a checkpoint or did anything else like that. They drove the truck out there, they released the drones, and out it happened. But now we're sitting here at this point. So let's skip a couple of these out here. The Daily Wire's got an interesting write-up on how it happened, which I read, but I'm not going to go with. But yes, now Russia has decided to go launch its aggression out on Kharkiv. Richard Woodruff, with an Ukrainian flag in his bio, says, "I'm just so angry at the world right now. Kharkiv, home to 1.5 million Ukrainians, is being turned into rubble, and the U.S. President's official response is, well, you gave them reason to strike you." This actually led to my first mute in the Discord, by the way. And it wasn't for breaking one of my rules. I looked at that, I looked at the statement, and I said, yeah, wishing direct harm against another person is against Discord's policies, not mine. I don't care. The person in question can take care of himself. But that's against Discord's policies. We're not going to let that one fly. And mute. The person is reinstated now at this point. But yes, they are launching on Kiev. And no, I'm sorry, Kharkiv rather. Now, I don't think that this is right. I think that this is 100% wrong. And we do need to find a way to go start winding this crap down. But I also understand the concept of what did you expect them to do? You went deep into their territory at this point. You've escalated the war at this point as well. I want this war to stop. Because nobody's winning right now. From the Associated Press, Russian attacks kill 3 and wound 64 as drones hit Kharkiv and other parts of Ukraine. By the way, Kharkiv is not reduced to rubble, as people on my Discord have alleged. There have only been 67 casualties out of a city of several million. Russian forces launched a new drone assault across Ukraine overnight on Wednesday, killing 3 people and wounding 64 others, Ukrainian officials said. One of the hardest hit areas was the city of Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine, where 17 attack drones struck 2 residential districts. Mayor Ihor Terekov said emergency crews, municipal workers, and volunteers worked through the night to extinguish fires, rescue residents from burning homes, and restore gas, electricity, and water services. Those are ordinary sites of peaceful life. Those should never be targeted, Terekov wrote on Telegram. 3 people were confirmed killed, according to Kharkiv official head Ole Senyehubov. In a statement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said 64 people have been wounded and reiterated his calls for greater international pressure on Moscow. Every new day brings vile new Russian attack, and almost every strike is telling. We must not be afraid or postpone new decisions that could make things more difficult for Russia. Without this, they will not engage in genuine diplomacy, and this depends primarily on the United States and other world leaders. Everyone who has called for an end to killings and for diplomacy must end. Oddly enough, I actually had a roommate. We lived in what they call the university apartments, which were a series of 4-bedroom apartments on site on the university that had 3 double rooms and 3 double rooms and 1 single room. And one of the guys in one of the double rooms was from the Donbass region. And what was interesting about that is that the University Housing Authority, in their infinite wisdom, and this was back in 2004 too, so the tensions were already there, and I heard about the tensions that were there. They roomed him with the Russian foreign exchange student. Yeah. Who told me one day that he speaks in Russian to this kid just to make him mad. But he's from the Donbass, so he speaks Russian. And again, I want this all to stop, but I can't sit here and necessarily blame Russia either for a retaliatory strike. You up the escalation. A little bit more telling on this one from Fox News. Iran becoming much more aggressive in nuclear talks, Trump tells Fox News. From Danielle Wallace and Brett Baer. And it looks like President Trump is speaking right now, so I'm not going to live coverage to that. Trump told Fox News that Iran has become much more aggressive in nuclear talks. Iran is acting much differently in negotiations than it did just days ago, Trump told Fox News' Brett Baer. Much more aggressive. It's surprising to me. It's disappointing. But we're set to meet again tomorrow. We'll see. Senior admin officials also told Fox News that Iran appears to be dragging negotiations on without concrete progress while pushing forward with its nuclear efforts. This comes as Israel is growing more concerned that it will have to act unilaterally to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Outgoing commander of CENTCOM, General Michael Kurilla, testified before the House Armed Services Committee earlier on Tuesday. He had provided a range of options to Trump to prevent Iran from going forward with their nuclear proliferation program. But I'm all in favor of having a negotiated settlement that prevents Iran from getting a nuclear weapon because of the consequences of the conflict. Kurilla told lawmakers Iran still remains the #1 malign influence on the Middle East and has doubled its enrichment capacity over the past 6 months. Pete Hegseth is traveling with Trump aboard Air Force One en route to Fort Bragg on Tuesday. Earlier Tuesday, Hegseth testified before the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Defense, answering questions from lawmakers on the Trump admin's proposed $1 trillion defense budget for 2026. Hegseth, though he did not address Iran talks directly, said the budget commits more than $62 billion to modernize and sustain nuclear forces. Rep. Chuck Fisherman of Texas did briefly bring up the looming Iranian nuclear threat while voicing concern the U.S. is recapitalizing the entire nuclear deterrent all at once. Meanwhile, Russia's recaptured its triad minus some bombers. China is rapidly expanding its numbers of and fielding a triad, of course. There's also North Korea and looming prospect of nuclear Iran, Fleischman said. As we focus more on the Pacific, our post-Cold War posture is more concerned due to the lack of in-theater, non-strategic nuclear weapons. This creates a deeply worrying capability gap in the most critical theater. So, long story short, Iran is ramping up the nuclear production. They still, by the way, do not have a way to deliver their payload. At least over here. Now, realistically, especially with the allies that they have around the area, if it really came down to it and they really wanted to do something stupid and ensure the end of the Persian Empire forever and the Persian bloodline possibly forever, they could just do what the Ukraine did and drive a truck across several of their friendly territories and get it somewhere close to Tel Aviv and light the thing off. So it's something to be concerning about over there. Over here, it's not so concerning. But the tensions are up, and per last night, U.S. to partially evacuate embassy in Iraq as Iran tensions rise. From Tom Bateman and Mike Wendling over at the BBC. Non-essential U.S. embassy staff and their dependents in Baghdad are to be evacuated from Iraq due to heightened security risks, U.S. government sources have said. Officials did not say what exactly prompted the removal. However, on Wednesday, U.S. officials were told Israel is ready to launch an operation into Iran. Because of course they are. I will remind you, I am not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not an Israel person. My first position is and always will be anti-war. And I still can't believe that this entire region of the world is in a state of non-stop war constantly. The officials said this was part of the reason U.S. advised some Americans to leave the region, and that the U.S. anticipated Iran could retaliate on certain U.S. sites in Iraq. Even as we are pulling out of this and saying, no, we don't want to do this crap anymore. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff is still planning to meet Iran officials for the 6th rounds of talks on Sunday, the officials told CBS. A U.S. State Department official told the BBC, we're constantly assessing the appropriate personnel posture at all of our embassies. Based on our latest analysis, we decided to reduce the footprint of our mission in Iraq. Trump spoke about Iran at an appearance at the Kennedy Center on Wednesday, telling reporters Americans were advised to leave the region because it could become a dangerous place, and we'll see what happens. Trump also reiterated the U.S. did not want Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. We're not going to allow that. And from CBS as well, Israel's poised to launch operation on Iran. Multiple sources tell CBS News. When Israel and Persia are getting into it constantly, as a person who has read the book of Revelation, it makes me nervous. Because that's one of the big issues, is that Persia and Gog and Magog will turn against Israel in the end days. And I've never had a clear answer as to where Gog and Magog are, but I know that they're close somewhere to Eastern Europe. Jennifer Jacobs, James Laporta, Margaret Brennan, and Gabriel Ake. And Iran's already been an ally of Russia, by the way, too, so. U.S. officials have told Israel is fully ready to launch an operation into Iran, multiple sources told CBS News. The U.S. anticipates Iran could retaliate on certain American sites in neighboring Iraq. This is part of the reason the U.S. advised some Americans to leave the region earlier Wednesday. The State Department ordered non-emergency government officials to exit Iraq due to heightened regional tensions, and the Pentagon has authorized military family members to voluntarily leave the Middle East, a defense official told CBS News. President Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff is still planning to meet with Iran for a sixth round of talks on the country's nuclear program in the coming days, the two U.S. officials said. So, that's something to come back and watch for, because that's going to get hairy in a hurry. What's interesting about that, though, is what they call the Pentagon Pizza Report, an X page. So, they openly source the tracking of a pizza spot activity around the Pentagon with frequent updates on where the lines are going. So, they obviously can't get customer information, but they picked some of the closest pizzerias around the Pentagon. And notice when they had business spikes outside of business hours, which, I mean, indicates typically that a lot of people, possibly in the Pentagon, are working late after hours, getting pizza, which means that something possibly is getting ready to go the F down. And I don't know necessarily what actually is possibly going to go down, but Freddy's Beach Bar had a spike. District Pizza Palace has had a strike. District Pizza Palace has been a popular one. Extreme Pizza are going to close around 10. Extreme Pizza slightly above average. I gotta reach out to Steven at some point. I gotta reach out to him anyway for Ed Talk, but ask him about some of these places. I wonder if he's ever tried them. I wonder if he can tell us which ones are good and which ones suck. So, apparently a gay bar near the Pentagon is experiencing a spike in activity as well. I don't know. From the takeout, the Pentagon pizza theory you might want to pay attention to, from Joe Hefner. Before we get into anything else, we should make this clear. This is not a foolproof scientific way to suss out foreign policy developments in advance. If you know what happens in Ukraine or the Middle East before the papers do, you have to do it the old-fashioned way and plant a bug in the Pentagon. Please don't actually do this. But for what it's worth, there's reported phenomenon that happens just before any major events take place on the global stage. The pizza places near the Pentagon get really, really busy. The idea is that when employees of the Department of Defense are faced with sudden development that requires work late into the night, they order something quick and easy to munch on while paying attention to something important. The same principle behind election night pizza. There's a multitude of fast food restaurants in the Pentagon complex, but no pizza places. So when a breaking development happens, such as a missile strike Israel launched at Iran in 24, Papa John's and other pizza chain restaurants close by get much busier than usual. The phenomenon was reported as early as the 90s. Although this is once again unscientific and it may not signify much, it's also worth noting that this theory is not something the internet just made up. Back in 91, after Operation Desert Storm kicked off, multiple news outlets interviewed Frank Meeks, a man who ran a number of Domino's locations in the DC area. He attested that the busiest day on record for the CIA vis-a-vis pizza deliveries was August 1st, 1990, when Saddam Hussein was gearing up to invade Kuwait. The CIA isn't headquartered in the Pentagon, but it's the same principle applies. The phenomenon also occurred before the invasion of Panama in '89. It seems that pepperoni, one of America's favorite pizza toppings, has a front row seat to foreign policy developments for decades. So, something to watch, and yes, there's even an X page dedicated to this. Alright, it is getting past 11. What else do I want to do? Because I know Stephen Ignoramus is getting ready to go on if he's not on already. Let's look at the steel tariffs. From NPC News, Trump ratchets up steel tariffs to 50%. From Rob Weil, one of America's most storied industries is getting a massive boost from President Trump's latest tariffs push at the potential cost of a broader slowdown elsewhere in the U.S. economy. Trump signed an EO increasing the already substantial 25% duties on steel imports he first set in March to 50%. He signaled last week that the tariff rate hike was coming. It's been over 3 hours, guys. It was coming. It went into effect Wednesday and shortly after midnight. We're going from 25% to 50%. The tariffs on steel into the U.S., Trump said on Friday at a rally in Pennsylvania, which will even further secure the steel industry in the United States. The tariffs on steel, along with those on imported automobiles and auto parts, have been imposed under authorities not affected by recent court decisions that cast doubt on the president's powers to enact trade barriers. The tariffs on steel, along with those on imported automobiles and auto parts, have been imposed under authorities not affected by recent court decisions that cast doubt on the president's powers to enact trade barriers. The U.S. steel firms have hailed Trump's renewed push to raise the cost to American firms that rely on imports of steel, but it's a notably favorable reaction to tariffs amid what has broadly been a backlash against them. Of course it is. These people want their jobs to be protected. Of course it's... Like, what did they think was going to happen? So, that is on its way up. A couple more on just non-political news before we get into things I like and things that I hate. From the USA Today, Dave's Hot Chicken has been acquired by a private equity firm that owns Subway. Now, this was billed as Subway buying Dave's Hot Chicken, and that's not the case. In fact, Subway itself was bought up by this equity firm fairly recently as well. From Gabe, how are you? How are you? Just 8 years after starting a Los Angeles parking lot, Dave's Hot Chicken has been acquired by private equity firm Rourke Capital in a deal worth approximately $1 billion to enter its next phase of growth and innovation. A spokesperson for Dave's Hot Chicken confirmed the acquisition to USA Today by email on Wednesday, June 4th. Started by 3 childhood friends in a parking lot in LA in 2017, the chain primarily offers chicken tenders and chicken sandwiches. I could go for a chicken sandwich right now, dude. And it expects to end the year with over 400 locations worldwide. According to the company, it has sold the rights to more than 1,000 franchise locations in the U.S., Middle East, and Canada, and will open 155 plus locations just this year. If you've never had Dave's Hot Chicken, which I am on that list of people, you probably have an increased ability to try it in the very near future. Because it looks like, especially with the Subway Capital Group owning this, Rourke Capital, they're going to ramp up production and it's going to go viral. On the other side of it, big beverage brand unexpectedly files Chapter 11. So, first the street goes on to explain how the beverage market works, which we're not interested in that. Some brands operate on a site. You may not know US Foods or Cheney Bros, but they probably supply the restaurant chain or local restaurant where you last ate. Caraway Tea is one of those large but off-the-radar companies. The brand explained its business on its website. As a family-owned business, Caraway cares about your business as much as you do. From our modest beginnings to today's respected reputation as an established leader in the tea co-packing and manufacturing industry, we turned our passion for truly fine tea into the most customer-obsessed premier private label tea manufacturing company it shared. Caraway has filed Chapter 11. While its partners may decide what recipe they want, the types of teas they plan to sell, Caraway sources the products and prepares it for retail. That can mean loose tea or ready-to-drink beverages. Caraway has now filed for Chapter 11 protection with $100,000 to $500,000 in assets and $1 million to $10 million in liabilities. The voluntary petition indicates the company has fewer than 50 creditors. So, they are going, they're reorganizing at this point. So, We will see what happens with them, and we will see probably Coca-Cola goes back and scoops them all back up. All right. It's getting late. We still have things I like, things I hate to do, so let's fly through that and let's head out of here. But we start, of course, with the rules of acquisition. We skipped this last week because we hit the time crunch and we ran out of time. So we have to think back to where our last rule of acquisition was, which was, I believe, the 101st was the last one. Yeah, it was. So we move on to our 102nd rule of acquisition, which, for those of you unfamiliar, is the Ferengi equivalent to the commandments in the Deep Space Nine series. Well, in the entire Star Trek franchise now, but the Deep Space Nine series especially focused on this. The commandments to the religion. So if you follow these commandments, like a good little Ferengi, you get to go to the Divine Treasury at the end of your life and bid on a new life with the credit that you have from following these. Some of these are outright mockeries of capitalism, but some of these are very, very good that you can carry forward and use in your everyday life. And I distinguish between the two. So our 102nd rule of acquisition, nature decays but latinum lasts forever, which in its use was used for Quark to complain about the fact that he was on a nature planet. This was in the DS9 episode where the Jem'Hadar were introduced in the Gamma Quadrant, and we first got our glimpse at the Dominion. But realistically, when we look at this, nature does decay, but it's a recycling situation. I would say that this is almost a mockery one, because, yeah, latinum lasts forever, gold, silver, they hardly break down. They're long-term. I mean, we're still finding coins from the beginning of civilization that are still intact at this point. But we still have nature, too. It's decayed, but it has renewed itself. Latinum doesn't renew. You actually have to actively go in and earn. So I decline to use this one as an active use of what we can use in real life. But that is your rule of acquisition for the day. We will get a bonus one at the end of things that I like. But first, let's do some things that I hate. So we have video here. We'll listen to this one here. Susie Arizio, who is one of the paid shills on X, put this narrative out. The woman is going on a cruise, so she bought some dresses online. And the total for them was $150, but she decided to send some back and only keep one. But before she could, she received a bill saying she owed $1,243 in tariffs. This is insanity, no more games. That's impossible, by the way. That is an 800% tariff. There is no 800% tariff that's been enacted. Even the ones on China, the big ones, got paused briefly off of this. And the other part of that is you wouldn't get a bill for the tariffs in the mail after the fact. It would be, if it's involved at all, it's put on at checkout and they show you what it's going to be. But let's listen to the TikTok that is pure propaganda at this point.
All right, low-key freaking out. I'm sure TikTok can help me. So I ordered a bunch of dresses from ASOS to try on for my trip, and I ended up keeping one, maybe two. I think two. Anyways, it's affordable. I think they were under $150. I got my mail today, and I got this. And I open it, and I'm like, it's an invoice for $1,243. What is this? I open it, and it's a list of everything I ordered from ASOS. I would have never ordered from ASOS or anywhere that I know that I would have to be charged for. I'm assuming it's the tariff. Isn't that something that should have been shown at checkout? I had no idea when I checked out. I had no idea. Don't know how I got stuck with the $1,200 bill.
I'm actually curious about this as well, because the woman in the video here is actually unclear about whether or not this is a tariff. So this might have nothing to do with tariffs, which again are typically assessed at checkout, if they are assessed against your order at all.
Which is actually more than my order. So if anybody has any recommendations, been through it, please let me know in the comments, because I do not want to be stuck with a $1,200 ASOS bill when I didn't even like anything that I ordered. This sucks.
I'd wonder if it's restock fee or not, but That's the thing, and this is the thing with Rizzio too, and I say this to MAGA people all the time because they do outright lie about things as well. It's part of what they've been told to do, but typically the truth in politics is enough to damage somebody's career and get them out of politics if you just tell the truth. Lying about them doesn't doesn't help your cause. It turns around and it makes people distrustful of the things that you have to say. Alright, other things that I hate. Josh Lippincott with the obvious response to this one. FBI discovers a cache of guns, armor, and Nazi paraphernalia while raiding a home in Washington state. But if you look very closely, and of course, if you're on the audio platform, you can't look, just like every other time that we see a known Nazi who's held these beliefs for a long time, the flags are always creased. Guys, I had a Gadsden flag behind me at my place outside of Janesville. You guys all saw it. It was part of my backdrop. And yes, when I first put it up, it was creased because it came in the packaging. I only lived at that place for 4 years. And it didn't go up right away even when I lived there. It took me about a year before I decided to go back and put that up because that white wall behind me was so drab and boring, you know, kind of like the one that's behind me now, that I want to organize into a log cabin look. I need to get on that, by the way. I've got all the pallets to go start doing this. I just need to take some time and get them yanked apart. But by about 3 months, the creases were gone out of that thing. So it seems to me, and it seems to me when they do this kind of stuff, that they go back and they find all these weapons and they want to turn the public against them, so they go and hang up these flags that they just bought off of Amazon. And no reason, of course, given on this picture as to why they were raiding the home in the first place. One thing I want to touch on with this was a leftover from last week. So Bonnie Blue, who is the P star who decided to go back and sleep with 1,000 men in 24 hours to set some sort of Guinness Book of World Records, is at it again. Now planning to go back and recreate the feat with now 2,000 in a glass box. I tell you this not to advertise for this because it would be hypocrisy from what I'm about to say, but just to set the stage of what this is supposed to be and what the outrage is. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this video have seen outrage to it on social media otherwise. But my take on this one here is the fact that it's this. The religious right has honestly done more to advertise this depraved sex act on X, and put it into the minds of millions of curious coomers who are going to say, hey, this is cool, let's go back and see what's going on with this and what happens with this. Is this really what this is going to turn out to be? They've advertised more for this than all of Pornhub, Xvideos, and all of Bonnie Blue's agents combined. If you guys stop watching, this crap is going to go away. I know my moralist friends disagree with me strongly on that one, but the people like Bonnie Blue are doing this for the attention. And you're giving them the attention, and they're running with it. So stop giving them the attention. You're never going to shame them out of the activity because they're not ashamed of it. So stop paying attention to them, and it's not going to become a massive feat anymore. Let's see, what else do we have on things that I hate? Ah, yes. And I love the fact that it's a short video because it'll just keep playing over and over again. Yeah, this actually should be on things that I like because this means that the whole Elon, my heart goes out to you thing, it's over. It wasn't a Nazi salute. And this one, I mean, people argued about this for about 14 hours and it just completely disappeared. Which is good, because it was stupid when it was Elon and it's stupid now. People are sitting here trying to take the moral high ground and explain how this is different than what Elon did. I'm like, just take the L. Your narrative fell apart. It's over. do something different. Alright. This one. This was the center point of the video that I made yesterday talking about this. Now, Ryan Cheat is running for president, allegedly. I don't think that he's going to make it. I don't think the powers that be in the DNC are going to let him through. And he's running on a very, very, very liberal wish list platform. He's running on a very sour grapes platform as well. And some of this stuff, I mean, if you're dedicatedly Democrat, this is your wish list too, and that's part of the reason that he's putting this kind of stuff out of here. Most of the stuff that's on here, he could not get done given specific constitutional constraints. It would be impossible to do without Congress, like term limits for Congress. And I did talk about the two that really, really bugged me about this one, essentially. Most of this I went back and I looked at and I said that this is going to be just either held up in courts, held up in Congress, and has no possibility of seeing the finish line anywhere. And as I said in the video yesterday, which again, you guys should go back and watch my solo video on this. It's 25 minutes or so. We get the back and forth about the revocation of pardons, which I think is evil on its face because it puts people in the position of double jeopardy. And then the districts thing I likened it to the districts in the episode Past Tense from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where it's built, and the guy, I'll give him the credit where it is. He's coming with all of this with the best of intentions, but once bureaucrats and evil people in the government get a hold of this, it's going to turn into the garbage that it is. Just like the districts were. I'm sure that in the Star Trek universe, when those districts were started for homelessness in San Francisco, the people who started them had the best of intentions, but after a few years, you realize that this has become a concentration camp for people. So I'm not a fan of this platform. The majority of this sounds like this is sour grapes. Sounds like I hate evil orange man and I'm going to be the anti-evil orange man, and centralizes a lot of power to the top of the government that would be better run locally and by states. Other things that I hate, Josh Hawley is advocating now for raising the minimum wage because he's facing a tough re-election right now and wants to do something to be a giveaway to voters. Missouri GOP Senator Josh Hawley plans to introduce legislation Tuesday to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour, a position that aligns with one of the most conservative Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill with some of the most liberal members of Congress. The legislation, called the Higher Wages for American Workers Act, would raise the federal standard starting at 2026 and would also call for an increase in subsequent years to match inflation. CBS News has exclusively learned Democrat Senator Peter Welch has signed on as a co-sponsor. And this is all well and good. If this is how you want to go back and buy votes, that's it. But I will remind you again, when you see big pushes for minimum wage from a conservative, it's typically a sign that the economy is about to tank. As far as coming out of a Democrat, it's just what they do anyway. They want to go back, and they think that the businesses can't possibly go back and raise their prices to match what their wage and cost is going to be. And I preface the economy about to crash thing by pointing out the fact, where do you know anybody right now that works for minimum wage? Where is there a minimum wage job literally anywhere right now? The Culver's starts at $18 an hour. The Taco Bell starts at $17. There is no minimum wage job out there right now. It doesn't exist. Wait staff would be the only one, and they get counted on their tips. That's the only reason that they don't run minimum wage online with everybody else. And even different locations are starting to rescind that and pushing $10, $13, $15 an hour for that kind of stuff. Nobody makes minimum wage right now. Now, if we do the things that I think that people want to go back out and do and try to force the economy into a crash, then yes, we could come back out and start to see minimum wage jobs pop back up again as people are trying to compete with each other for the few jobs that are left. But yeah, nobody makes minimum wage right now. Goats and Scarf said, someone broke my record. Probably talking about Bonnie Blue. Let's do some more things that I hate. I'm going to skip the Catholic stuff. Sorry, Bong, but I'm not Catholic and I'm hungry. I'm going to skip the Evers stuff too. That guy's on his way out. I'm not going to skip this one because I complained loudly about this one. Pom heard me. She was with me when I found this one. Not woke, just weird. Dr. Squatch makes soap with Sydney Sweeney's bathwater. Yes, you heard that correctly. Soap brand Dr. Squatch got itself in a controversy last week when it unveiled a new soap that is infused with the bathwater of popular actress Sydney Sweeney. Yes, you read that right. Sydney Sweeney's Bathwater Bliss, with a scent of morning wood, is being sold to men around the world. I don't want it, dude. While the marketing ploy may not be the woke garbage that some other personal care products have pushed, Dr. Squatch's Sydney Sweeney play certainly is weird. We would rather be disturbed if some guy obsessed with Sweeney snuck into her bathroom to swipe a vial of her bathwater. That's the vibe Squatch is bottling and selling to dudes worldwide at $8 a pop. Now that the soap is sold out, people are selling it online for up to $1,500. The next part is important, I will say that. You asked, Sydney said yes. And now it's for sale, Squatch wrote in an Instagram post. Accompanied by Sweeney lathering up in a bathtub. Sweeney pitched the idea with a wink and a smirk. When your fans start asking for your bathwater, you can either ignore it or turn it into a bar of Dr. Squatch soap, she said, in a press release calling it weird in the best way. No, it's weird in the worst way. Why? Seriously, why? I don't understand the idea of wanting somebody's bathwater in the first place. This went all the way back to... I can't think of the girl's name right now. I can see her face. Belle Delphine. That was it. Doing the same thing with just sending out the bathwater. And Sydney Sweeney is a relatively successful actress. Belle Delphine I can understand because she's an e-whore working for OnlyFans tips. And from what I understand, they're pretty good OnlyFans tips, but she's working for that. Sydney Sweeney is a multi-million-dollar movie actress. So, I don't get it. I don't understand. It kind of makes me now want to buy Dr. Squatch, and I kind of enjoy their soap. So, but this is just weird. I'm sorry. Somebody in the comments or in the live chat tell me why you would want something like this. Alright, and the last one on things that I hate is that Democrats, backed by Soros, the right-wing boogeyman, launch a huge new initiative to turn Texas blue. It's not going to happen, but enjoy your initiative. Alright, let's do some things that I like. And there's a bunch. I don't say that very often, but there's a bunch. Alright, I'm going to redo the end of last episode because, and I'm going to get popped for copyright on this too, and I don't care. There goes the manure spreader. But I forgot to unmute my microphone because I got up and I think I answered the door or something while the video was playing. But the new King of the Hill is set to be out in August. And they've released the credits and there's a lot going on. So we're going to try this again. We're going to share the opening montage from the new King of the Hill and talk a little bit about what's going on with it because there's a lot to talk about here. So on August 4th, Hulu will release the newest, and they're going to batch release the whole thing, the newest 10 episodes of King of the Hill. And there's a lot going on in this title sequence that I think is going to have to be explained in the show. What it appears that they are trying to do with this is demonstrate what happened in the last 8 years. So even though it's been 17 years since King of the Hill aired last, they're only going to age everybody up 8 years. So it's only been 8 years in King of the Hill universe, because they play fast and loose with time. But I mean, you see a lot of the things, a lot of the change out there. They changed the seasons. That's Dee Dee and Good Hank, so he's going to be making an appearance in the show. And I mean, it's good that they go back and play that out. I'm sure they're going to have flashbacks to Cotton Hill, because that was one of the most successful characters in the show. But you see the seasons changing. It looks like Nancy and John Redcorn got back together, because you see him get picked up. You see her get picked up in his Jeep in a winter scene. Hank apparently leaves for a little while, and it's uncertain whether he sells the house or whether they go back and do a rental or an exchange. But allegedly, he moves to Saudi Arabia in these 8 years, and they use the time in one of the white picket fence communities to build up their nest egg. And you see Bill crying as it happens. Somebody else moves in, possibly of Middle Eastern or African descent. And maybe that might be the person on the work exchange as well. But also hangs out. COVID happens in the King of the Hill continuity. So you see them out there social distancing. Dale's wearing his mask around his chin, probably because it's really hard to smoke with a mask up against your face. And then Dale runs for mayor. Or Dale runs for mayor or Nancy runs for mayor. It's not clear either. The iconic pole leaves. And then the Hills go back and move back, and Dale pulls the Gribble for mayor sign out of his yard and goes and throws it in the trash. So, a lot to unpack with this, and there's Bobby full grown at 21 years old, right there. The character model looks really good, I think. I think that the artist did well with that one. So, we'll see what happens with this. I'm hoping that I'm going to be pleasantly surprised by this. Alright, some other things that I like. Trump admin opened 13 million Alaska acres to mining and drilling, which may be a big part of the reason that we've seen a recent drop in gas prices. On speculation more than on actual volume at this point. And that might actually offset some of what we're seeing coming out of Iran, which typically will drive gas prices back up. Alright, where's my cursor? Wrong window. The Trump admin is planning to open millions of acres in Alaska for new oil and gas development by rolling back a Biden-era rule that Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum said prioritized obstruction over production. The announcement comes after the BLM in 2024 significantly expanded procedural requirements and created a presumption against oil and gas activity in approximately 13 million acres of the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska that were designed as special areas unless operators could prove minimal or no adverse effects on surface resources, according to the Department of the Interior. And I hope that they'll keep that into it as well, because, I mean, Alaska's beautiful. We want to make sure that that stays beautiful for a long time, even after the reserves are tapped, which is probably going to last long beyond our lifetimes. Oh, the phone's going to die. But yes, they've opened up new land area for that. What else do we have? I think this is a continuation on this. Yep, top Trump officials visit prolific Alaska oil field amid push to expand drilling. And again, we need to do more of the drilling at that point. It'll keep us competitive on the market, and it'll keep countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and yes, even Russia from manipulating the prices. It takes strategic advantage away from Russia. And China even from manipulating prices. when the world's oil market is flooded, it gets cheap. People buy oil. And hell, yes, that will put money into the pockets of the oil barons because they make their money on volume, not price at the pump. So that'll be good. CNN having a report. I'm going to skip this one. That's going to take a lot more analysis than we have time for because, again, it's pushing noon and I'm really hungry. But I will say that CNN is forced to cover the brutal poll numbers. Let's listen.
How Americans sort of see the parties. Which party is better described as the party with strong leaders? Look at this. Wow. 16% of Americans say Democrats. 40% say that of the Republican Party. Now, overall, no party's doing great. Lots of Americans say neither of these qualities apply to either party. But look at how much worse off the Democrats are. A party that gets things done. Only 19% of Americans say that about the Democrats. 36% say it about the Republicans. In fact, the only place that the Democrats are numerically ahead, party of the middle class, this is basically a tie, though. Yeah. 34% say that of Democrats. 32% say that of Republicans. But this, I think, is the most fascinating. How do partisans talk about their own party? So among Democrats and Democratic leaners, 32% say Democrats are the party with strong leaders. I mean, of their own.
Yeah. That is not good information. Oh, we disconnected.
Right? 82% of Republican leaders say that about the GOP. Only 41% of Democrats say they're the party that gets things done of their own kind. And I will just say, 51%, Manu, a majority of Democratic and Democratic leaners say
Come on. I can still talk over this because this is going to wind up being the recording, but for those of you who missed any of this, yeah, we did disconnect for a few seconds. We lost some frames on that, but I don't know if it was enough to kick the Twitch stream out or back up, and it's still considered the same stream. Is the YouTube stream kicked out? Same stream. Yay, we did it. We got reconnected. But anyway, going back to the poll numbers, yeah, probably having to sit back and report that was painful to the CNN folks. I guarantee. I would say, honestly, even the Democrat Party is still the party of the middle class, and that was an apt descriptor of them. Upper middle class, I would even say. Maybe not the lower middle class, because the Republicans are split between the party of the rich, which the Democrats are strongly taking that over, but also becoming more of the party of the poor, the poorest of the poor. With the upper middle class saying, okay, well, let's redline and keep those people out of our yards and out of our places. But yeah, that had to be painful on them. Some good news on the American jobs front. GM to invest $4 billion to shift some of the production from Mexico into the U.S. Shares of GM rose before the opening bell, announcing plans to invest $4 billion to shift some of the production from Mexico to the U.S. as the automaker navigates tariffs that could drive prices higher. President Trump signed EOs in April, relaxing some of his 25% tariffs on automobiles and auto parts, a significant reversal as the import taxes threaten to hurt domestic manufacturers. But let's talk a bit more on that. GM said late Tuesday investment will be made over the next 2 years, and it's for gas and electric vehicles. The company will add production of the gas-powered Blazer and Equinox, which are made in Mexico, to 2 American plants in 2027. The Blazer will be produced at Spring Hill, Tennessee, and the Equinox will be made in Kansas City. I'd love to see actually a turnaround and get like Janesville back open, even though the buildings are all gone. But yeah, put some investment back into that one. You got a city full of people that are waiting to work. GM will also begin making gas-powered full-size SUVs and light-duty pickups at its Orion Township, Michigan plant, which was previously being reconfigured to make electric vehicles until demand for such cars was weakened. So, there you go. You've brought jobs back. and the construction, contracting, and retooling to go back and do something about those. I wanted to touch on this one just briefly. This is an op-ed from The Hill talking about the big beautiful bill and secretly dismantling the civil service. From Everett B. Kelly. And there's a reason, and I put there's another tab of the rules of acquisition up there because I wanted to touch on that for a second. Because I like this, actually. I do. It gives people the option to get paid less for a lower risk, for a guarantee that they'll have their job with the union backing them, or take a chance, go without union protection, be an at-will employee, and then earn their merit as they go up and get paid more for their trouble. Because typically the people who are going to want to go that route are going to work harder because they want to get a raise. The House-passed budget reconciliation bill contains a troubling provision so dangerous and corrosive to the integrity of the federal government it demands immediate scrutiny and rejection by the Senate. Buried in more than 1,000 pages of legislative text, the Section 90,002, a provision that strikes at the heart of the professional, nonpartisan civil service. It proposes a 9.4% salary surcharge on newly hired federal employees who wish to retain their civil service protections, ostensibly to pay for their retirement benefits. Those who cannot afford this effective tax on the rights of the federal employees currently enjoy would be forced into a permanent at-will employment, although they would then qualify for lower retirement deduction of 4.4%. As purely at-will employees, they could be fired at any time for any reason or for no reason at all with no legal recourse. What do? You get paid a little bit more, you get to keep a little bit more of your money, and your retirement is effectively unchanged. Or you get paid a little bit less and you have your job guaranteed by your union. And there's no right answer to this, by the way. Some people are going to choose the safe route and some people are going to choose the more dangerous route. And it goes to the 60-second rule of acquisition. The riskier the road, the greater the profits. You can choose safety or you can choose freedom and the ability to make your own salary. You cannot have both. I like this idea. I do. And it gives people the level of comfort and protection that they want. Another thing that I like in the Big Beautiful Bill, which there's not much, tucked deep into the sprawling One Big Beautiful Bill Act is a clause that could quietly take billions from money sent abroad. What's the downside of this argument? It proposes a 3.5% tax on remittances sent abroad by foreign workers, including green card holders and temporary visa workers, such as those on H-1B visas. I mean, I would go 10% if it was me. Because they're sending, Indians sent home $119 billion, enough to finance half of India's goods trades deficit. So yeah, why not get taxed on that as it goes? What can we put that money into? If it's going to leave the country, let's retain some of it and do something with it. I'm against taxation on its face. But it's our money, it's our intellectual property, and it's our workers being put out, so let's do something with them and for them. Alright, a couple other things that I like. I'm going to skip that one. That one's a long one. I'm not going to skip this one because it's funny. Rapper who called cops actors with badges mocked after police respond to his home invasion. This is Macklemore, who apparently works with Ryan Lewis. People, I don't know who either of these people are. Amanda Harding reporting. Macklemore, a rapper best known for the 2012 song Thrift Shop, was a victim of a home invasion at his Seattle residence over the weekend while his children and nanny were there. According to a police report, two men allegedly entered the residence just after midnight on Saturday. A woman later identified as the family nanny was able to escape and call 911 after she was hit with a blast of bear spray. She escaped, but the three children were still inside the house, the report said per People. The caller also added the house belonged to a high-profile individual. The woman claims the intruders were yelling at her, asking, "Where are the jewels? Biatch." Then she brought them into a bedroom and observed the thieves went through the drawers, cabinets, and raided the closet full of clothing, jewelry, and shoes. Social media users pointing out the hypocrisy of police being dispatched to his home during a crisis after the rapper released the song Heinz Hall last year, which was critical of law enforcement and referred to police officers as actors with badges. But that's part of the issue with being in civil service. No matter how much the people hate you, it is still your job to take care of them. You should be able to opt out of it, but that is not the duty that you signed up for. You signed up to serve and protect. So, but I like the fact that this guy is getting called out on his crap. And got caught with the cops going to his home to take care of him. And lastly, I have not done much because I don't do the culture war. But I kind of like this idea, and I've had this conversation with Palm before too, driving around everywhere. But Simone Biles is back down, and Riley Gaines spat. They were going back and forth with each other, calling each other the fact that they looked like men, saying that Riley Gaines finished 5th, which she did, and trying to discredit her entire movement. Which goes to me onto, and she's apologizing for this and taking this out of the news. But one of the things that's always been at the heart for me, because I don't give a damn about the transgender thing, and I don't care too much about the transgender athletes and sports things. I think it's regrettable, unfortunately, that mediocre men feel they have to go back and act like this to get some trophies, but realistically, it's a local thing, and I think the people who are in support of it should have the opportunity to show us all how it's done, if they believe so deeply into this. I don't think this should be a federal thing. Now, part of the reason I put this on things that I like and bringing it out of the news is the fact that Biles and Gaines are both taking this out of the national conversation, not the local conversation. Because this was going to the national conversation, and the current presidency is trying to make a national law saying that transgenders cannot compete in women's sports. And here's the thing, if Maine and California and Illinois want to show us how it's done and how to make sure that biological women still get the same scholarships that transgender women are coming in and taking, then do it. Do it in your state, show me how it's done. I will vote in my state to keep the two separated. With Madison being involved, I will probably get outvoted in my state, but North Dakota, South Dakota are going to keep the mandates in place and keep men out of women's sports, so it's called. Illinois, Colorado, New Mexico, California are going to say free for all. If you want to compete in a women's sport, we have scholarships for you. Because you were mediocre on the men's side. So yes, California can come out and show us how it's done. Demonstrate how to do it right. That's supposed to be the big part of this American experiment, is because different things work for different states and different regions around for the people. And if something really, really works, or some people feel really passionately about it, such as the transgenders and sports thing, then they can vote for it on their states or even in their municipality levels and show the rest of us how it's done. Show the rest of us how to do it right. All right. We're done. 4-hour contemporary. Now, mind you, at this point, some of this was left over from last week's contemporary, and we had a big thing going with the LA riots. But I'm still going to try to come back and keep things as I want this to go back to a 2-hour show. I do. If the Trump administration would stop making every week a record-breaking week, then it'd be easier to do that. But I'm hungry. It's lunchtime. I got shit to do yet today. Oops. I hope your kids were in the car with that one, although the school year should be over, so I know there's daycare involved and everything too. I got stuff to do today. Let's head out of here. I'm going to go hug the lovely lady that's carrying my baby, who is insanely important to me. And always will be. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's get out of here. All right, thank you everybody so much who came by and hung out in the live chat. It was a slow day today. I know that my last episode was just rough, and I understand that there's probably some audience drop off of this from that. But you guys, we only grow with grassroots support. Take the replay, share it out to some friends, listen to it in the car on the way somewhere, get some other people involved. There's audio platforms if you want to listen to the car, but share this out, share this out, share this out, share this out. We'll be back here next week to see what happened with the LA riots, what's happening with Iran, and whether or not we are in World War III at that point. Take care. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.